It was an ordinary and calm day in the city, where nothing new was happening. From the supermarket, surprisingly, it was filled with shoppers, and in the background, a television was playing the news. A guy takes a bag of chips from the shelf, but it looks like it's defective, and the news says the sky is covered in dust and smog due to recent sandstorms. A little girl next to him says that he is a thief because he steals food that he hasn't even paid for yet, but he denies it. Suddenly, breaking news is broadcast on television that an earthquake has suddenly occurred in the vicinity, but since it was not very strong, there were no casualties. And then they add that this earthquake is starting to gain strength, so it is advisable to protect yourself. There's still something being said on TV, but no one is watching it anymore because something much more interesting is happening outside. Suddenly the ground shook violently and rose up, as if something unusual had crawled out of it. In this place, as if from under the ground, a very strange and tall tower rises at a dizzying speed. All this is very frightening for people. No one understands what is happening here, especially a frightened little child. The whole store is shaking. People around are asking if everything is okay, if no one was hurt. The guy picks up the child and protects her from falling. He asks if everything is okay with her. The two of them look around and see what is happening outside, and the frightened child asks what happened. Meanwhile, a new unknown building appeared behind the shop window, frightening in its appearance. This strange building appeared not only in one place, it is also found in others, including England. In addition, this tower has disturbed people in Japan, as well as on all continents and countries of the world. There was a lot of debate and talk about it, but few people knew what it was or where it came from, and people called it the Nightmare Tower. Suddenly, people were told that they had been chosen to save the world, and those who pressed the button to accept the challenge were immediately sent to the battlefield. They were greeted by the system. It was all like a game. You could earn things and skills. But everyone quickly realized that this was not a game at all, and that everything was happening for real. Very quickly, this tower made itself known and caused unspeakable horror among all people. It happened one day when people were actively working around her. They had some kind of plan. At first, they didn't notice anything, but one of the workers looked up and drew their attention to the tower. A creature on two legs emerged from it, resembling a human, but it was clearly not a human. The creature has claws and a tail, and frightened people call the police when they see it. A real monster with large, very sharp and strong teeth emerged from the tower. A great catastrophe occurred, and many monsters escaped from this tower and spread throughout the world. And from the loudspeakers on the street came panicked cries that the tower had attacked people. The city's residents are terribly frightened and are trying to save their lives and those of their loved ones. And the authorities deployed the army and heavy equipment to destroy these monsters. However, these formidable monsters are not at all afraid of tanks and bullets, which do not harm them. The city is attacked by many different monsters. Some of them are extremely large and strong, while others have wings and can fly. Because of all these monsters that were constantly coming out of the tower, a third of the planet's population was brutally destroyed. And all those who voluntarily wanted to become walkers found themselves inside the tower and could only watch what was happening outside. Since the system said they could save the world, people decided to try. So we decided to try to climb the tower, clear it of monsters, and put an end to this horror. These strong and very brave people were the last hope for the salvation of all mankind. But one day this cursed tower was attacked by people called walkers. They are entrusted with a very important mission. They must prevent the end of the world and the destruction of humanity. However, at some point in their journey they came across a wall. A large stone blocked their path, and there was no further passage. No one was sure that they would be able to break this stone by force, but they tried to do it anyway. But strangely enough, it worked, and they managed to make a hole where they noticed something very strange. There was a shiny blue stone lying on the ground that they had never seen before, so they didn't know what it was. The tower sent a message with information about the Stone of Return. With its help, you can return to the past and save your memories. To activate it, you need to break it. The captain of the Walker, Huang In-chan, was extremely happy to have the opportunity to return to the past. So he said that he would tell about this stone after he used it and broke it with his foot. The bright blue light blinded all the warriors nearby, so they had to cover their eyes. The light became less bright, and everyone looked in surprise at the mountain where a bright point towered. When only smoke and fading light remained in the captain's place, they realized that their captain had truly disappeared. But the only question that hung in the air was whether he would be able to return to the present after being in the past. Former scientist Sakamoto, who was with them, said it could have been much more obvious. He stated that the man had traveled into the past, but due to a space-time rift, he would most likely never be able to return there. He explained everything that was happening based on scientific theories, such as the theory of the multiverse or the theory of parallel worlds. The man stated that there was a rift in time and space, meaning that the Huang In-chan who had traveled to the past was no longer the same Huang In-chan they knew here. Upon hearing this, the men were extremely surprised and found this information very strange and even frightening. Samatoko is sure that Huang In-chan ended up in a completely different time-space, so his trip to the past will not change the present in any way. As far as he knew, all these items from the tower never lied, their descriptions were absolutely truthful. The stone will send them into a time rift, but that's just his theory, and it's entirely possible that using the stone will land them in this very world. But ultimately, the impact of the objects in this tower goes beyond the human mind. And then the clouds thickened in the sky, huge lightning bolts appeared, and one of them struck the tower hard. All the monsters in the tower became active, as if they had been given a sign. A huge number of monsters flew out from all the cracks of this tower. They are ready to attack people again. And before the end of the world comes, the walkers must find a solution, use the Hearthstone, and go back in time. Or they can stay in the tower and try to deal with all these monsters. Then they will most likely die. A huge monster with a terrifying mouth emerged from the wall they had made a hole in. He mercilessly destroyed everyone in his path, and many suffered from this. All those who remain understand with despair that this is the end. They no longer have a choice. Poor people hold these stones in their hands and understand that their life in this world is over. Almost all the walkers decided to use the stone to save themselves from the ugly monster. There are 2 of them left, and one of them asks for forgiveness because they have no hope left. It immediately disappears, but the last warrior is still standing. He has no desire to use this stone. The poor fellow falls to his knees in despair and no longer tries to fight. He has lost all hope. With his hands down and in deep despair, he stands before a mad and ruthless monster. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a very brave man appears, confident that he can handle all this. He delivers a series of quick blows to the monster and releases a green liquid from it and its tentacles. Everything happened very quickly, and the boy cannot believe what happened. This young man looked at the poor thing and smiled sweetly. He always asks if everything is okay with them. The red-haired young man slowly looks around, enjoying what he sees. Behind him stands a whole legion of fighters against these damned monsters. They ask if everyone was saved. The boy looks at his saviors with tears in his eyes, and the man thanks him for standing firm until the end and not running away. It was these people who did not use the Stone of Return, who were humanity's hope for salvation. The head of this legion stood proudly among his brothers and urged them to move forward. These are the warriors who bear the responsibility for the fate of human existence. They are called Seize the Day. They are all defeated, their weapons are broken, and the one who remains alive is completely exhausted and wounded. The guy lies there exhausted, finding it difficult to understand at what point everything went wrong as they had planned. Although no one wanted it, many of their brothers died in battle in this tower. These monsters are extremely strong and always different, and it is difficult to immediately understand how to defeat them. The boy steps on the creature and worries about his friend who is planning something dangerous. Jae Hwan attacks the monster from behind while it is distracted by his brother. He gathered all his strength into a fist and swung his weapon to destroy this monster. On the other hand, his friend attacked her and also made every effort to destroy this evil. With their combined efforts, these guys finally managed to destroy this monster. They dealt it a crushing blow. And after they did that, the body of this monster simply turned to dust. Yun Hwan said that fortunately there were no casualties, and that those who were injured would recover quickly after rest. It seems that this tower gave them the ability to heal wounds quickly and painlessly. With such success, they have every chance of reaching the top floor of this ill-fated tower. The guys are smiling happily, and Jae Hwan noticed something interesting from the side, so he got a little distracted. He saw the dragon suppression sword. It was imbued with the energy of the sun and moon. It was forged by the master of the 85th floor in 1,000 days to kill the dragon. The warrior picked it up and admired the beauty and power of the sword. The boy was glad that a stronger weapon had appeared. Jae Hwan looks at the blade with a smile on his face and hopes that they can still reach the top floor. But now, looking back, he realizes that he actually thought that everything was going for the best and in their favor. Now they reached the 98th floor. This is the Purgatory Chamber. Here they met the strongest monster of all they had seen before. Their extremely durable weapons were almost completely destroyed. It looks like the monster simply melted them, and their legion seized the moment was almost completely destroyed. The poor guys couldn't survive this battle. Jae-hwan watches all this in horror and can't believe that it will all end here. At this time, the monster swung its huge limb to destroy another brave hero. He easily throws the poor thing into the wall, which cracks from the powerful blow. The boy screamed loudly in severe pain and appeared to have suffered serious injuries. You can tell from his eyes that he has already lost all hope of moving forward. The poor guy remembers the past, how much he went through with his friends in that damn tower. He understands that there is no chance now, and that continuing the fight is most likely useless. The boy had already lost all enthusiasm in fighting these monsters that had taken the lives of his faithful comrades. But he can't accept that they've already been through so much, and now he's just going to die one step away from victory. Jae-hwan stares at the terrifying monster he has to deal with. But suddenly he notices a brave man very close to the head of a terrible monster. This brave man, this is Yun-hwan. He gathered all his strength to finally destroy this monster. The Seize the Moment Legion warrior is very strong as he manages to pierce the monster's armor. He inflicts a lot of injuries, and does not give this creature the opportunity to destroy even one more person. Yun-hwan calls his friend and asks Jae-hwan to finally pull himself together. The guy tries to hold out as long as possible and inflict great damage on this monster that has taken many lives. He jumps high to deliver another powerful blow. This warrior is trying his best. The young man asks for help because he understands perfectly well that he cannot cope on his own. This terrible creature turned its red, burning gaze on the poor boy. Jae-hwan doesn't move. He still stands in place as if nailed to the wall. He is stunned by what he sees. His friend no longer holds his weapon as tightly as before. This terrible creature pierced a strong warrior of the Seize the Moment Legion. The young man could no longer fight. Jae-hwan screamed his friend's name in horror and despair. He couldn't believe that this actually happened. After this, for unknown reasons, the monster turned in the opposite direction from the guy. It's as if he's running away from something. Something very strange is happening to this terrible creature. The monster broke through the stone wall with its head. It destroyed it with its strength. The young man understands that all this is very strange. These creatures usually do not act like this, so it surprises him. Jae-hwan gritted his teeth and focused all his anger on the monster that took his loyal friend with him. The boy felt that he still had the strength to fight. He had to avenge all his brothers. So the last warrior gets to his feet and picks up his weapon from the ground. He still needs it. The young man doesn't want to let this monster go so easily. He speeds up and quickly approaches it. He doesn't know if he can survive the battle, but he does it for the sake of all those who fell in the fight to save humanity. The Legion warrior uses his power and, like magic ropes, wraps it around the monster. Suddenly he noticed a light on this creature. It seemed that these ropes were causing him irreparable harm. The guy adds strength and makes the liquid flowing inside the creature flow out. Jae-hwan now realizes that the monster escaped because it was already weakened and damaged enough to be easily destroyed. The creature falls to the ground with a loud thud, raising a large amount of dust. The walker puts in even more effort and approaches him at breakneck speed to deliver the finishing blow. The monster could not withstand this powerful blow and suffered a crushing defeat. The creature lies in the burning liquid that recently nourished it, and now suffers from it itself. The young man sighed in relief and turned to Yun-hwan, who explained that it was time for them to leave. But the boy was in no hurry to get up from the ground. He had a large wound on his stomach. The poor guy didn't have the strength to get up. This monster seriously injured the boy. It caused him irreparable harm. Jae-hwan looked at his faithful friend and realized with horror that with such wounds he would not be able to survive. The boy smiled one last time at his brother, with whom he managed to reach the 98th floor of the tower. But this is where his journey ends. He apologizes to Jae-hwan for not being able to go further with him and help him. During the time spent together, the young people managed to get to know each other well and develop a strong friendship. Kim Yun-hwan's smile never left his face, and it always warmed the hearts of those around him. Even that terrible tower couldn't take that away from him, so the walkers began to call him the Knight of the Smile. But at that moment, perhaps for the first time, a smile appeared on his face. The boy understood his end. Jae-hwan's heart was breaking, but he turned away from his friend and asked him to leave. He doesn't want this brave and strong warrior to leave him, so he goes another way. The young man looks down and walks away from Yun-hwan with a heavy burden on his heart, leaving behind only the memories of his sincere and kind smile. The guy stood up with difficulty. He knew that his friend had noticed everything and clearly understood what needed to be done. This stone was in too bad a condition to be used, and Jae Hwan realized this. The young man can barely move. He climbs the steps with difficulty and thinks about his friend. In fact, Jae Hwan turned out to be much stronger than he previously thought. The guy reached his goal and sat down to gather his courage and do what he had to do. He thought that it was Jae Hwan who gave him the confidence that reaching the summit was indeed possible. Yun Hwan gave this world his last smile. He is sincerely glad that his friend stayed here and will be able to finish his work. Then he pushed off the floor with his foot slightly, and what was supposed to happen happened. He disappeared from this world, and now his smile will not be able to warm the heart as before. Jae Hwan will miss him very much. This guy made this world at least a little kinder and better. He will miss Yun Hwan very much and will try to go all the way to the end for him. And his friend will continue to live in the boy's memories until he himself dies. But now he has no time to grieve for his friend. He needs to move on. He must continue on his way because now the fate of all mankind is his responsibility. The young man opened the door to the next level, and a bright blue light shone from there. It took Jae Hwan's eyes a few minutes to adjust to the bright light and figure out where he was. And the next moment the young man realized that he would now have to fight on a snowy plain. A cold wind immediately blew on him. The boy's clothes were completely unsuitable for such weather. The Seize the Day Legion warrior didn't have to wait long for a new opponent to appear. It all happened so quickly that Jae Hwan barely managed to dodge the icy blows. However, he is not an easy prey, as he managed to get here and overcome various difficulties. Suddenly a very strong and cold wind arose, which almost knocked the young man off his feet. The dragon with a huge mouth slyly asks if his new victim has already surrendered. The boy's hand was covered in ice. Apparently, this creature still managed to harm the young man. But that doesn't stop him. Jae Hwan confidently declared that he will never give up, and the ice dragon took his words as a challenge and struck on the spot. The walker hid from this terrible creature to buy time and try to do something with his hand. The dragon tried his best to find his opponent. Apparently, people don't come here often. The boy sits quietly in his hiding place. He can't let this creature find him any sooner than necessary. This monster has been sitting here for 10 years. He uses some kind of potion to heal his injured arm, the monster's blows causing him great pain. At level 98, Jae Hwan had faced many difficult challenges, but what awaited him here was far more difficult than what he had already experienced. The boss of the 99th floor of this cursed tower is the ice dragon Velhesus. He inspires fear with his strength. The breath of this dragon from the Forgotten Lands is difficult to withstand, even if you have a high level of cold resistance. The young man understood that if it weren't for the weapons and supplies of the dead walkers, he would have no chance of winning. On the 85th floor, he received the dragon suppression sword, and from Yun Hwan, the ice demon armor. The boy sadly bowed his head and remembered his faithful friends, for whom he came here. He gently touched the Fire King's bracelet and remembered from whom he received this artifact. This is from Han Shiel. He suffered so many losses, lost so many friends because of these damn monsters. He was extremely sorry that such wonderful people had to die such a horrible death. An image of a beautiful girl with a warm and gentle look appeared before his eyes. He regrets that he was not stronger and could not save her from death. She did not deserve it. No one deserves it. He remembers with horror how Han Shiel died, unable to survive a fight with another monster, and Jae Hwan couldn't save her or prevent her death, and it breaks his heart. The young man remembered another incident when he was sitting at the table and calmly drinking tea. The man asked him if he wanted to try again, and the young man replied without hesitation that he definitely wanted to do so. Then the warrior boldly and confidently declared that he believed that this time he would definitely succeed. The Atopos blacksmith, whose name was Jae, looked at the young man with interest and was glad that Jae Hwan did not give up. Adipose City was the last one to be recaptured after defeating the 50th floor boss, Alniminus. People did not lose hope. Even when wounded or dead walkers were brought in every day, the priests founded a rescue squad to save wounded soldiers. In this city, blacksmiths worked to ensure that warriors had weapons and armor so that they could fight to save humanity. The guy thought for a moment and decided to note with sadness that Jae now seemed special to him, since he is the last blacksmith of Atopos. But the man asks not to remind him of this. However, he added that Jae Hwan was the only person he worked so hard for, and noted that weapons from the lower floors were no longer being returned. Jae explained that he had little ore left, although there was a lot of it a few months ago. The guy understood that this was to be expected, because there were almost no living people left in the village. He has lost track of time and doesn't even know what year it is. There have been more than 10 tremors since the tower was built. And at some point, people stopped coming to the first floor. It became completely empty. With sadness in his voice, Jae Hwan stated that, in his opinion, humanity had been destroyed after all. The last blacksmith in town looked down sadly and continued his work. Apparently, he too realized that the boy was right. He asked the warrior if he had studied the tower well and if he had noticed anything strange there, other than the fact that the tower always remained the same. This made the young man think, and he still remembered some rather strange things. He noticed something where the wall had been broken and where the return stones had been found. There he saw a very strange inscription which read, "A tower within a tower, a nightmare within a nightmare." He assumed it might be a message from the people, but he had no idea what it might mean. Koval said that 2 days ago Grandma Kylene disappeared, and this information scared him. Time stops in this tower, so if someone disappears from it, there are 2 reasons for this. The first option is that a person used the Stone of Return and found himself in the past. Or there is another, no less terrible option, that the one who disappeared jumped from the tower. Halen from Halen's potion and Jay from Jay's workshop were among the few remaining walkers. The blacksmith tries not to show that he is sad or worried about her. But Jae Hwan understands that underneath this mountain of muscles, this strong man hides a gentle heart. Suddenly the boy asks his blacksmith friend to teach him blacksmithing. The man's hand trembled when he heard such a bold request from this young man. Jae didn't answer, apparently needing more time to think about the request. And Jae Hwan waited patiently for an answer. He sincerely wanted to master this difficult task. A seize-the-day Legion warrior emerges from his hiding place, ready to continue the fight. The dragon reported that since the tower was built, no one had climbed to the 99th floor alone. The ice dragon Velhesis declared that he recognized in this boy an amazing person, but the young man did not want his skill to be recognized by some monster. The boy teased the dragon, saying that it would even hurt him if he died, since he knew his abilities, but the dragon explained that this was impossible. The young man doesn't believe the words of this overgrown lizard, so he grabs his sword and is ready to prove him wrong. Jae Hwan asked the dragon with interest why he was so confident. He is smart and observant enough to notice flaws in his opponent's defense. So he declared that even the armor that the dragon was so proud of had already cracked. The arrogance of this young man greatly irritated the overgrown ice lizard. So he aggressively declared that it was time to put an end to this senseless chatter and was ready to strike. And the next moment there was a very strong blow. The dragon used the power of his breath. This did not pass without a trace for the boy. Crimson drops appeared on the white snow. The poor guy was in a lot of pain from his breath. It seemed like their fight ended at the very beginning. The dragon chuckled and asked if this worthless man had really decided to fight to the end. Jae Hwan remembers his loyal friends who died in this fight for humanity. The dragon hypnotized the boy. He believed that even if he stood firm to the end, he would only receive loneliness. The ice figures, who look like his faithful friends, seem to encase him in ice. They do this at the will of the monster. This lizard-like echidna watches as the boy slowly dies in her clutches. The brave boy sighed heavily and declared that the dragon had been sticking out his tongue for too long. And then he put in a lot of effort and managed to free himself from the captivity of these ice sculptures. The dragon aggressively asks if this little man has decided to attack him again. He calls on the walker to surrender because he himself will never be able to defeat such a large and strong dragon. Jae Hwan went to the tower later than everyone else, so he missed out on a lot of different skills and hidden abilities. That's why he decided to give up all skills and focus on just one thing. His only skill was to attack the enemy, and he did it over and over again. Thanks to this lunge, he managed to kill over 50 million monsters, and his brothers gave him the second name, Lunge. Over time, the guy realized that his skills were changing. He was becoming faster, more accurate, and stronger, and as a result, he gained such strength that he became more effective than any hidden skills. This technique was not a skill that took away strength, so the boy did not get tired in battle. But despite this, it was still difficult for him. Jae Hwan had already made 100 attacks, but he had only managed to make one small dent in this dragon's armor. It was clear that this creature would not tolerate such a thing. The dragon immediately prepared for his powerful icy breath. The walker realized with despair that he had no time to evade. But suddenly, at the last moment, he noticed something very interesting, and it gave him hope. Jae Hwan noticed a light coming from the wound on his opponent's neck. He remembered everything that happened on the 98th floor and how he defeated the previous monster. The guy realized that he had already seen this same light on another monster, and this was great news. The walker has already gripped his weapon much more boldly and tightly. He hopes that he has a chance. So without hesitation, he takes advantage of the moment and attacks the dragon with his signature attack. The warrior hit the target accurately. His sword pierced the enemy and destroyed his armor. Now Jae-hwan knows for sure that he can do it. He is full of confidence in it. The wounded monster was very angry. He did not understand how this insect dared to do such a thing. But the young man smugly declared that he had not hit hard enough and that he should have simply torn the monster's head off. The ice dragon has spread its wings and does not want such a situation to happen again. He stood tall and declared menacingly that this time he would wipe him off the face of the earth. And without thinking twice, the dragon used his icy breath to destroy his offender. The poor guy barely had time to dodge all the attacks. If even one had hit him, he would not have survived. This is a very difficult test for Jae-hwan. He barely dodges. The boy is surprised that this monster can make such powerful attacks. With great disappointment, he realized that there was no chance of winning. The dragon has cornered him, and he won't be able to defeat this creature. But the monster looks pitiful, its jaw hanging open after being wounded. He explains that if at least 10 pedestrians had come here, they would have dealt with him. And he added that if people had not been deceived by the Dream Demon Stone, everything would have been completely different. The boy doesn't understand what stone the dragon is talking about, so he asks him what he means. However, it is clear that he will not explain anything, but will immediately attack the guy. Jae-hwan does not wait for his death peacefully, but runs away from this dragon. This monster just watches as the guy who maimed him simply disappears. He has reached the door through which he came here. This will be his salvation. The warrior left this floor and closed the door tightly behind him to make sure that this creature would not appear here now. He understands perfectly well that he was a millimeter away from falling. If the claws of this monster had reached him, he would not have survived. Jae-hwan remembers the dragon's words about the Dream Demon Stone, but he can't understand what he was talking about. What kind of stone was it? How did it deceive everyone, and what could have been different? Many questions immediately arose. The warrior was glad that he managed to get out of there alive, but he still returned after 5 years. This time he was much stronger and better prepared for this fight, because he already knew what awaited him. The system bombarded him with various messages congratulating him on completing a new level. This time he managed to destroy this monster, so the guy received many congratulations on reaching the 99th floor. Jae-hwan looked at what was left of his opponent and asked what the Dragon Dreamstone was. This creature answered with the last of its strength that it knew the answer to its question without him. But he added mysteriously that he would understand everything when he found himself on the top floor. As a reward for completing the level, the young man received a new weapon, the Ice Dragon Sword. This weapon is infused with the breath of the Ice Dragon, and can determine when its wielder is ready for battle. Suddenly, the young man looked down and noticed that something very strange was happening on the ground. Some substance that flowed out of the ice dragon begins to move and rise upward. She rose very high and formed a door right in front of the brave warrior. And at the very top, the number 100 was formed, indicating that this door leads to the top floor of the tower. The guy took a deep breath and collected his thoughts. He was ready to boldly move forward. Without thinking twice, he goes inside, not knowing what will happen to him next. After the boy walks through the door, the number 100 slowly turns into some other inscription. In its place appeared hieroglyphs, indicating that a control room was hidden behind the door. Jae-hwan had already peeked out the door and was looking around with genuine interest. And he was very surprised by what he saw there. Probably the guy expected to meet another monster there. But what I saw there was something completely different. A multitude of different screens and photographs showing the tower and the city. The young man came closer. He was very interested in examining all this and looking at the tower from the side. All these pictures depict places he has already visited. The boy sees the place where the walkers should come. He also sees a topos, a city where those who have not yet perished at the hands of monsters live. He was so focused on these images that he didn't notice someone approaching him and saying they were glad he had come. Jae-hwan looked around and immediately got into a fighting stance, and the voice said that he thought the boy would return to a topos first. And then he calms him down and explains that he shouldn't worry, because he completely forgot about him and didn't have time to prepare everything. The boy received a message that surprised him, because it said that he was the first to complete the training of the 294th world. His achievements were recorded in the immortal Akashic records, and this record will be visible to the monarch of the great land. The guy read it and realized with horror that it was actually a workout, although it didn't look like one. He is overwhelmed with emotions, and they turn into water that envelops the poor guy. The warrior was extremely excited. A large puddle of water had already formed under his feet, caused by his stormy emotions. The voice asks if he is surprised, and hopes that the boy will soon recover from the shock. A huge wave of water rose up around the young man, ready to swallow him up. The creature smiles slyly and remarks that if he does not cope with his emotions, they will consume him. And then the lion head with bright eyes adds that it is probably too late to pull yourself together. And he tries to explain to the guy that there is no reason to be too upset, because he achieved a good result, considering that he is an ordinary person. However, this brave warrior did not give in to his emotions and tried his best to calm down. His stony expression shows that he is in a state of complete calm. His interlocutor is surprised, because the guy came to his senses earlier than he expected. The young man unceremoniously, and without mincing words, asks what kind of creature this is, and who he is anyway. Then he remembered that he had not introduced himself at all, because he was very glad that this young man had reached the 100th floor himself. Such cases had never happened before. He said that his name was Devil Bystrian and that he was the master of this tower. The warrior noted that if this was just training, then the game itself had not even begun yet. The demon smiled slyly and noticed that the boy had a sharp mind. But first he wanted to show him something. And the next moment he clicked his paws with sharp claws, showing what he had prepared. A large screen appeared in front of him, showing people who were in the tower for the first time and looking around in surprise. The guy watches the video carefully, which shows how he started his journey. These are his memories that show him how he met Seal, how she joined their group. Bystrian slyly noted that at that moment they looked quite happy. He then recalled joining the Seize the Day Legion and talking about how his head was not a weapon, but a sword. These were quite difficult memories for the boy, because everything that happened in that tower was terrible. And the creature noticed that this young man would never again see the faces of his faithful friends. The video shows their difficult battle with monsters, in which many people died. Then, at that moment, no one expected that everything would turn out exactly like this, and that this would happen. Among all those who died in this battle was Seal, for whom the boy fought very hard. He was overwhelmed with emotions. He didn't want her to die. These were very difficult memories for him. And after that, he was shown a video of the death of his faithful friend, and the demon noted that it was a very touching story. He asks the young man how he feels and whether he has tears of anger or disappointment, and suddenly adds that she can give him a second chance, but the guy looks angry, not hopeful. The creature smiles ominously and explains that the boy will have the opportunity to play the game again. He tries to console the guy and adds that this is a great opportunity for him. Like a cunning snake, he convinces the boy that he will be able to relive everything, knowing what awaits him, and adds that in the world of people, this is only possible on the pages of books. Instead, Jae Hwan wonders in horror if this is the end because he expected all this horror to end someday. He doesn't understand. Wasn't he supposed to save the world after taking over the tower? Or was he really being deceived this whole time? Now the warrior understands that in reality humanity had no chance to save itself and survive. All this time they have been trying hard and very persistently to do everything in their power. All this time, people continued to try to capture the tower, dying one after another. All this was for the sake of saving humanity. They all firmly believed in it. They were convinced of it. And only now the boy understands that all this was just a false hope for salvation. The young man is under the power of this demon. He does not think long before answering his offer. The guy very confidently and loudly answered that he would never return to the past. This answer from this, as it seemed to him, pitifully worthy man somewhat surprised the owner of the tower. But suddenly he began to bare his sharp teeth and mock this young man with a grin, and this laughter turned into a loud and crazy laughter that filled the entire room. In fact, he was very amused by the boy's idea that he could go back in time. So he decided to explain one very important thing to this brave warrior. The demon stated that no object or artifact could send him back in time, and there was nothing powerful enough to turn back time. But Huang doesn't understand how this can be true since he himself saw the stone of return. And immediately after these words he understands what the ice dragon meant. The dragon's words echoed in his head, saying that people had been deceived by the dream demon stone. The guy remembers this stone and the description that the system gave him, and with horror he realizes that it was a lie. The creature explained that it was not actually a return stone, but the dream demon stone. He is not able to return a person to the past. He simply locks him in demonic dreams. Bystrian explained that he could not even imagine that people would want to go back to the past and fix it so much. The demon then added with great sarcasm that only humans are subject to such obsession. Jay Huan, with great sadness and memories of the people who used this stone, noted that this is true. When they had managed to resolve all these issues, the demon announced that the real game could now begin. But she explains that this is not a return to the past, but a start of this game from the very beginning. The boy was asked if he wanted to start the game, and to the demon's great surprise, he refused to play. Jay Huan didn't think twice because he knew full well that this was just a clever manipulation. The brave warrior explained that thanks to the master of the Tower of Horrors, he understood a lot. A new report has emerged that the Tower of Terror, also known as the Tower of Regret, is created by a dream demon and is placing walkers in artificially created dreams. The young man explained that he had already been in the dream demon's dream and would not return there again. And that is why the boy grabbed the weapon and boldly declared that he would kill the owner of this tower. He did not believe in the cunning and insidious plan of this monster. The warrior was going to kill him and leave. The creature took a deep breath and explained that there was nowhere else to go. This was the end of the tower, although the boy stated that he didn't trust anyone anymore. The demon asks if he is really that bothered by the existence of fake items and achievements. But the boy does not listen to what this creature is trying to tell him, and immediately strikes. This creature is left without a head, but this does not stop it from continuing to speak. The demon, thanks to his powers, tries to turn his head and asks what the warrior wants. He can give him skills or artifacts, whatever he wants. In the end, the young man had come a long way and deserved a reward, but Huang replied that he did not need anything. Bystrian slyly asks if he wants to return to his previous normal life. The demon explains that he was a prisoner in the Tower of Horror's dream, and therefore no monsters exist in reality. Huang doesn't understand how these monsters can't exist. The creature snapped its fingers and the boy saw ordinary life before he came here. People are chatting peacefully, preparing to go to the cinema and discussing films. The guy doesn't understand what's happening. How could this happen? Was he really that fooled? Suddenly there was a strong jolt and Jay Huan was suddenly moved to another place. He found himself in public transport, similar to a train. The guy was amazed by everything that was happening here. In reality, no one died, the earth did not turn into a desert, and most of humanity did not disappear. The demon noted that it must be great news for him that his friends and relatives were not killed. Bystrian snapped his fingers again to move again, and wanted to show him the most important thing. He saw many hospital beds where patients still lay, unconsciously connected to various machines. The young man moved closer to the hospital bed to get a better look at what was happening. He saw himself on the bed, connected to the machine. The guy was very impressed by this. The demon explained that decades had passed in the Tower of Terror, but not even a month had passed in the human world. The creature noted that the boy would never be able to defeat him because he could barely lie down during training, and he added that there was a huge gap between people and dragons that he would never be able to overcome. Jay Huan boldly stated that it was a great relief to him to learn that the creature was a dragon. He announced his sword and said that he had fought dragons before, so he wouldn't have any problems. The demon was very angry. He did not like such impudence on the part of this pathetic creature. A brave warrior entered into a fight with a very powerful creature, and who knows how it might end. The heavy wooden door opened, letting a little sunlight into the dark room. Jay Huan comes in completely exhausted and with severe wounds. He calls Jay and tells him that he's back. But the room where Koval was most often looks as if no one has been there for a very long time. However, the main character needs weapons to fight all these evil demons. So, using the knowledge his friend shared, he tries to make himself a good sword. 72 days passed. The warrior fought the dragon every day, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not leave even a scratch on it. But on the other hand, Huang didn't die either. For reasons unknown to him, the dragon didn't kill him. The control room shows a video of a guy working in a forge and thinking that no matter how long it takes, he will achieve his goal. The dragon watches this young man with great interest. He is very surprised and even amused by him. He believes that he should keep it for himself because it is a good product that can be sold successfully. This dragon had been cultivating for a long time, and this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. A farmer is a being who must ensure that the product is delivered to the mainland through secondary processing, that is, by sifting out the worst, the product becomes better. And it is during the training that the best products are selected, which are then turned into real games. But suddenly one product appeared that refused to move to the next stage. Anyone in the Tower of Terror can be killed without any consequences. Their souls are still alive in the real world, so it can be assumed that no one has died. But there will be a lot of problems if he accidentally damages the soul of his product. The Reapers, who are closely monitoring all of this, will never forgive him for such a mistake. Therefore, the dragon believes that he needs to sell it as soon as possible. It's time to move on to the next level, because he still has to pay off the debt for buying the tower. He is such a special product that even gods who have no connection to the demon world contacted him about this guy. Suddenly, at this moment, when the demon was calmly pondering these things, Huang appeared and attacked again. The creature easily repelled his attacks and stated that this guy was driving him crazy. He asks ironically if this war is not enough to continue this useless struggle. The demon remarked that he had better start the real game and spend his power usefully. The next moment he repeated his signature finger gesture and was ready to show off his tricks. Literally a second later, he disappeared from the boy's field of vision, and he does not understand how this happened and where the dragon went. Suddenly a mirror appeared in front of him, in which he saw his reflection, and behind him, a dragon. The guy doesn't stop fighting. He swings his sword and is ready to strike again, even if it is useless. The poor guy is trying his best. He is definitely not the kind of warrior who gives up easily. The next moment, this block, which served as a mirror, shatters into pieces from a strong impact. Huang was injured, his head was damaged, and he has difficulty coughing. The angry dragon grabs the boy by the neck and asks what he wants and why he continues to insist on his own. The guy explains that he will kill the dragon and move on, which even disappoints Bystrina a little, and he asks what he needs to do to make him agree to the game. Huang chuckled. He saw that the creature was already on the verge of fainting, and quietly praised himself for being able to hold out for so long, and explained that he wanted to ask for something. The dragon is already sitting calmly and explaining to the boy that the universe does not consist of only one dimension, but he calmly replied that he knew about it, and added that he also knew about parallel incarnations and the multiverse. But the demon wants to clarify something and says that there is one main dimension, the almighty Earth. And then he explained that it was from this great land that many different alternatives branched off. The Earth is a small planet in a large dimensional system consisting of a large number of alternatives, and they called these actions the 294th world. In the Tower of Terror, walkers can gain skills, obtain various items, and level up. In this way, they will be able to adapt to the structure of the mainland and thus have a chance to enter another world. And various evil demons like him have the ability to control this game. But the guy doesn't understand at all why he's doing this, why the demon needs it. The dragon noted that it was a good question, but he didn't think it was something he really cared about. Bystrian snapped his fingers in his usual gesture, and it seemed like the tricks were about to start again. But they find themselves in a ruined city and ask a question that really interests the guy. So he wants to explain why, out of all the alternate worlds, the Tower of Terror ended up on Earth. The dragon asked if this was not what interested the young man most, why he and his family were forced to face this, and then he gave a very short and quick answer that their world was chosen at random. But this guy said that he was asking about something completely different. He was interested in why he was running this tower. The demon was very surprised, and the young man continued to ask what benefit this tower would bring him. His interlocutor thought for a moment and explained that it was something like his passion or even hobby. And then I realized that this guy didn't seem to really believe his own words and didn't understand that demons also have hobbies. He then explained that among them, there are those who simply enjoy watching outstanding walkers, and there is also a place called Paradise where monsters and demons live alongside humans. And to make his point completely convincing, he showed the bishop's message, which said that the boy should not be killed. And then he smiles slyly and asks if he believes him now. Huang didn't answer, he just watched because he thought it was all complete nonsense. The walker found himself on the 99th floor, where he had already defeated the ice dragon and received a message that he had reached the maximum level of 100 and all his stats were at maximum. The guy was in terrible condition. He was badly injured, so he drank a potion to recover. He looks at this message with terrible despair and realizes that he now has no purpose. But he still can't tame this monster, the master of the Tower of Horrors, although he really wants to do it. The warrior lay down on the cold ground in despair, wondering what to do next and how to understand what is real and what is not. Jae-hwan ponders whether humanity can truly be destroyed and how he will know. Perhaps everything in this world is destroyed, but some alternative version continues to live peacefully. And at that moment, the boy felt something very strange. He had never experienced anything like it before. This alarmed him, and Hwang thought that something very strange had happened inside. And then his attention was drawn to some very strange yellow light, which was definitely not there before. Bright yellow substances began to appear in the air, and the main character even thought that perhaps it was a hallucination. Jae-hwan hesitated a little, but still tried to touch the strange things in the air. As he examined the substance, he squeezed it in his fist and it seemed to crumble into small particles. These small particles were first shaped into Zycra cubes and then immediately crushed. The guy believes that these particles are the components of the world, and it doesn't matter what shape they have. Then he remembered the bishop's inscription that the demon had shown him, and he began to gradually understand what was happening. The warrior frowned and realized that he was just entertainment for the stronger life forms in this universe. Suddenly, a demon appears in front of him, and the boy asks who the monarch is and if he is the one in charge. And he tried to explain briefly and clearly that monarchs are observers of a large country. Those who manage to complete the game are sent to the mainland and receive the support of the monarch. Jae-hwan didn't quite understand what this meant, so he asked again to get a more precise explanation. The dragon stated that the boy's future could change dramatically depending on the monarch chosen. And then he promised that if the boy obeyed him, Bistrian would use all his strength to help him get to the great monarch. But the demon noted that this would only happen if the young man agreed to play the entire game to the end. Jae-hwan noticed that the creature now spoke like an annoying store clerk. And the next moment the guy agrees to join the game, but will do so only after 10 days. 9 days have passed, and the boy is still training with the sword to be in top shape before the game. The demon sits calmly in his control room and watches all the actions of the young man. But he is looking forward to it. There is very little time left, and he remembers that he bought this tower because he was deceived. These memories made him angry because he remembered how false they were. He was told that the tower had been built by the Lord himself, and that it was so old that its value could hardly be overestimated, so it would definitely be a good buy. But he regrets that there is no function to voluntarily exit the game while keeping all your achievements. And now he himself is trapped in the tower, unable to exit the game because Hwang refuses to move on to the next level. He sat there in despair for so long and had already resigned himself to his unhappy fate. But finally, all this will end tomorrow when Hwang starts the real game. The warrior received a message asking if he wanted to return to World 294 without losing his memory and start the game. The dragon is looking forward to the moment when the guy confirms the application. He is very excited. But completely unexpectedly, the guy attacks him. The main character still wants to kill the demon. He asked with great surprise what was going on here and why Jae-hwan was doing this. The guy had been dreaming about this for a long time and had been training for a long time. He deliberately took his time in order to prepare well. The walker holds his weapon tightly in his hands and makes a remark to the demon, which he could have guessed. The young man, with a threatening expression on his face, explained to his enemy that from now on he would hunt him. With these words, he strikes his opponent again. The guy is very confident in his abilities. He noticed that after hallucinating these gold particles, it became more difficult for him to control the sword. But he explained that every time he tries to take a shot, he gets a very strange feeling. The guy thinks it's like waking up, like he's breaking this dream. Therefore, Jae-hwan does not intend to stop and stubbornly continues to attack this creature. The main character, with a smile on his face, waves his sword and declares that this is the feeling of life. However, a magical symbol appears under his feet, which the boy does not notice at all. In place of this symbol, a huge tree immediately grew, which the boy saw on the 91st floor. It is called the Black Iron Tree. The monster regenerates his arm and explains that this should have happened a long time ago, adding that he has never seen anyone like this guy. The dragon smiles slyly and watches with pleasure as they do this to the boy, paying a huge price for it. The protagonist finds himself completely trapped in the iron roots of the breeder tree and wonders what this creature plans to do with him next. Bistrian calmly replies that this walker will not be able to finish the game without his permission. The demon finally abandoned all attempts and hopes of convincing this stubborn warrior. But I decided to try again and asked why the guy decided that his studies should be continued. However, he added that the Tower of Horrors will automatically close after 100 days of training. The dragon explained that he needed the boy to survive, so he needed to complete his training and move on to the game. The boy has no intention of staying there alone, so he calls on the demon Bystrina to stay. The protagonist stated that on this vast land he is called the Sanctuary of Irritation. The guy knows a lot about this monster. He says that it lived 784 years and visited 128 worlds, and now continues its vile selection among the walkers. The demon cannot believe what he hears and has no idea how he knows all this information. Jae-hwan boldly asks if this bastard was planning to hand over his mathematics to the Black Monarch. The monster asks in surprise where he knows all this from. How can he know all this? The boy saw golden letters, a message from the demon to the Black Monarch that the selection would soon be over if he could convince the farmer. The main character explained with a sly smile that he was the one he had been waiting for so long. Suddenly a bright light appeared and the warrior managed to free himself from the shackles of the iron tree. And freed from the roots, the boy attacks the monster that imprisoned him there. With just one blow, the demon Bystrin lost his arm, but this time he was very surprised and frightened by it. Something very strange has happened. Will this guy really be able to defeat his opponent? The protagonist uses his power again, but this time the enemy defends himself. It seems that Jae-hwan managed to injure the demon the first time, so now the demon is holding his hand. He can't believe that this idiot managed to give him such a cancerous tumor on his arm. The expression on his face reflects all his confusion and shock at what happened. The walker holds a very strange sword in his hand that emits a blue light, as if it is enveloped in something. There are some very strange things happening around. It feels like the game has started to reboot. The guy looks very confident in his abilities, so he stands proudly and stares at the demon Bystrina. When he reached the 100th floor, he began to wonder what it all meant. The main character began to doubt whether this was really a dream. He then wondered if the demon really could not or would not kill him. Then he wondered if he could be reborn after death, and he had many questions. The elements of this world crumbled into particles and text appeared. The warrior watched the demon carefully. And now, after a long period of doubt, Jae-hwan has finally reached the stage of absolute certainty. He has discovered something new, penetrated into understanding through and through, and now he can use this powerful force. The vortex of energy quickly approached the demon and very easily and completely destroyed his defense. The dragon was surprised by the abilities of this walker and became very angry with him. This creature opens its mouth with large fangs and asks what is going on here. The system issued a message about the lifting of temporary restrictions, which shocked the tower owner. So he became extremely angry with him and explained that he would no longer feel sorry for him and would give Hwang a chance to surrender before it was too late. But the boy will not do this. He will proudly and bravely stand against the demon in battle. Bystrina noted that the young man had achieved a lot in such a short time, but there is a limit to everything. A multitude of sharp thorns instantly grew out of the ground, and the dragon declared that no man could defeat him. This stubborn young man was not so easy to defeat. He looked at the weapon he received as a reward for passing the last floor. But he squeezed it tighter. It was the only thing that could help him in this difficult struggle. The timer shows the countdown of the loading time, and the demon pushes off the ground with its paws, ready to attack. The creature approaches the boy extremely quickly. Its rage knows no bounds. It will not let this pathetic insect ruin everything for him. Bystron shouts that Jae-hwan will still participate in the real game, and by doing so, he makes his situation worse. The timer has reached a round number, and the main character is preparing for the decisive blow. The main character skillfully dodges all the sharp spikes and strikes the enemy. The boy remembers how he defeated all his previous monsters, especially those he encountered on the upper floors. But full of confidence that he would succeed, he dealt another blow to the monster with whom he had been fighting for a very long time. The demon is angry, but he can't do anything. He only begs that all this doesn't happen. Now Bystrina finally realizes that this is not just a reboot, and that he will soon have problems. He cannot comprehend with his mind how this ordinary man was able to accomplish all this. There was another blow and a bright light appeared, as if after an explosion, and the demon suffered more and more. The main character does not stop for a minute. He continues to attack to destroy the enemy. The dragon screams wildly from pity and severe pain, opening its wide mouth full of fangs. Jae-hwan stands proudly and holds his weapon at the ready, but first he wants to clear up a few things. The guy wants this unearthly being to know that people are not just a commodity to be sold. But he added that they were not so useless that they could be digitized in some game at the behest of some demon. People were not things that could be given a price tag. Bystrina turned into a small creature. Hwang poked him with his sword and explained that he would no longer obey his plan. The main character raised his head and knows perfectly well what he wants to do next. He has already thought everything through. So he says that he will completely destroy this place and move on. He will rise higher and higher. Jae-hwan confidently declared that he would destroy this terrible world, and there was not a hint of doubt in his voice. The guy is confident that he can destroy the world created by these scoundrels. Suddenly the ceiling began to crack. Fragments rained down onto the ground, and the roof of the tower collapsed. Demon Bystron ducked to avoid being hit by shrapnel and asked the boy to stop. He pitifully begs not to do this and repeats again that there is absolutely nothing higher. However, the summer hero knows very well that in reality it is much more interesting there. But then he confidently added that he was sent here for a reason, and these words shocked the demon. The guy remembers that on many floors he came across strange inscriptions on the walls, and they interested him. He read about the Tree of Illusion on the walls, and wondered if the Tower of Horrors was actually created by the demon sitting at the top of this tree. The young man was sure that there were also inquiries about the dream demon Mulark, so he continued his search. Hwang asks if they are now at the root of the illusion tree. If that is true, then it also has a trunk. The demon fearfully asks what the warrior is planning, and he explains that he intends to break through the ceiling here. And the next moment he raises his weapon, and a huge stream of energy rushes upward. The system indicated that an unknown error occurred during loading, and then showed that training was complete. Now the guy is in a completely different place, but the poor guy looks very tired. But despite this, Jae-hwan is happy that he finally found exactly what he was looking for. He wanted to be here. This place is not as quiet and calm as it seemed at first glance. It seems that scary monsters live there. The creatures with large mouths sensed the presence of strangers in their territory and were ready to attack. These giant wolves surrounded the main character, but he is not at all scared. He is alone, and there are more than 10 of them, and these creatures do not plan to leave him alive, so they immediately attack. The wolf quickly approaches the boy, his eyes blazing with fury and his huge fangs terrifying. Jae-hwan is not afraid of any of these creatures. He makes a light lunge at it and immediately inflicts serious injury on it. He then looks back and sees another evil monster approaching him. This creature is extremely close to him, but this fact does not frighten the warrior at all. He can cope with it. The creature looks very bloodthirsty and evil, as if this creature was specially created to destroy everyone around it. The protagonist holds his weapon tightly and is ready to defeat this creature. He does not seem to consider it very strong. But against this huge wolf, he uses a medium lunge that literally cuts the monster in two. On the monster's head is a large horn, which is enveloped in a magical yellow glow, looking magical. The boy became curious and decided to take the thing for himself. Hwang easily pulled it out of the creature's flesh. He put the horns of these creatures in the backpack on his back and noted that the monsters here were not very strong. Jae-hwan heard the noise and looked around to see what was going on. Suddenly, some strange creatures appeared and shouted aggressively, "How dare this man do this?" One of them points his finger at the backpack and shouts something, but it is difficult to understand what he wants. The warrior looked at them all carefully, but could not make out what this creature was saying. And then he realized that they were pointing to the horns behind him, so the young man offered to make a deal. He would give up all these things, and in exchange he would want information about what this place was. But the monsters didn't seem to even listen to him, and it was unknown if they understood him at all. They went on the offensive. One of these green monsters immediately dealt a strong blow, apparently thinking that this would be enough for victory. The young man got angry and said that now he would have to kill these scoundrels with bulging eyes. He is ready and willing to proceed with his promise. He does not mince words. Jae-hwan didn't have to spend much time and effort to neutralize them all, since all of his stats were at their maximum levels. Now he is trying to get at least some information from this monster. The young man needs to know what this place is. The guy grabbed 2 antennae sticking out of the head of this incomprehensible creature, and it screams in horror that this is a game. The walker is still trying to get at least some valuable information out of him, but all in vain. The creature uttered a few words incoherently, which were understandable. They said, "Human, kill, now." And the next moment he bit his tongue, and it looked very strange and incomprehensible. The boy tore off the antenna and the creature died. At first they seemed weak to him, but now he thought they were not so simple. Hwang looked at what was left in his hands with surprise and interest, trying to understand what function these things performed. But he decided not to think long and left the antennas on the ground, and went to explore the area. To get a little more information, The protagonist decided to look at other creatures. He saw a small bag and received an information message from the system that it was a small backpack for storing things with a volume of 2 cubic meters. After leaving the tower, the system stopped working, and he thought he would gain access to the other dimensional system. But this did not happen. But fortunately, he at least has access to information, and after examining the bag, he noticed many interesting stones there. The boy examined the stone and was informed that it was a spirit stone, and that it gave him the ability to increase energy. He collected them back into his bag, thinking they might have some value and wondering if anyone made them here. Having completed his search, the guy wondered what to do next and where to go, but he still didn't find out anything about this place. Suddenly, the sword he received as a reward for defeating the ice dragon made itself known. The guy sat down and looked at this thing in surprise, not understanding what was happening to it. And the next moment, the dragon's mouth appeared, as if a ghost was trying to get out of there, or it was a hallucination. It all ended as suddenly as it began. Nothing else happened, and everything just disappeared. The main character props his head up with his hand and tries to understand what just happened. After sitting like that for a minute, he was able to examine everything more closely, and noticing the crumpled paper, he suggested that it might be a map. The guy opened it and saw there a tree of illusions, as well as some other castles, possibly a settlement, and a strange inscription, Chaos. He remembered that the idiot in the tower hadn't told him about this place, so he would have to try to find out for himself. At first, this forest seemed like a very quiet and peaceful place, but these palm trees and greenery create a deceptive impression. A little further away from Jae-hwan, wolf-like monsters angrily open their mouths, ready to attack. Their opponents move towards these creatures fearlessly, quickly, and energetically. It is unclear what they are, but they look very human and seem to know what to do. The girl with red hair looks at the spores with confidence, but her eyes are unusually bright. She threw the blade, probably intending to hit one of the monsters, but something went wrong. Because she stepped on some guy's foot and apologizes, explains that it happened by accident, and promises to change her hunting location. He smiled at her, and when she turned around, it was clear that the man was angry, and thinking about how badly she must be handling the weapon that had accidentally hit him in the knee. The other boys looked in horror at what awaited them ahead and screamed in fear. A terribly angry bighorn, also known as a bighorn, is quickly approaching them. This terribly evil creature with huge fangs and an open mouth runs towards the girl, who does not seem to be scared at all. All this happens near a high cliff, and the people below are trying to prepare for a difficult fight. Huang watches them from above and comes to the conclusion that this girl looks much stronger than the others, but they don't seem to be very friendly. At this rate, they'll all just die. I wonder how they even got out of the tower with those skills. The man has gathered his strength and is ready to join the battle. He uses his skill, Breath of the Fire King. The girl screams that she will help him and immediately hits him hard on the cheek. She then smiles cheerfully and apologizes again, although this time the guy calls her a whore. The red-haired girl noted that it was very rude to call her that, because she just wanted to help. Hung Nim doesn't notice the monster approaching him with its mouth wide open while he argues with the girl. It seems that the protagonist realized that they would not be able to cope with this creature, especially if they were so careless, so he decided to help. Jumping down from the mountain, Jae-hwan used his sword, made a medium lunge, and easily defeated the monster with one blow. Han Nim seemed to be too close to the monster, so he got slapped quite a bit and he didn't like it very much. There was a lot of smoke, so no one immediately noticed the stranger, only his powerful weapon was visible. Jae-hwan wields a strong and large sword that emits a beautiful blue light. The main character stands proudly on his prey and carefully looks at everyone present. He didn't seem very impressed by what he saw here. These people didn't look particularly strong or smart. They discuss whether everything that happened here was legal and whether they can take Bighorn's body. The man tries to wipe the dirt from his face, and the girl watches the stranger with interest. Someone said that it would take at least 10 people to defeat this creature, and Huang thought about the fact that the previous creature had 5 horns, so the more horns, the stronger the beast. The girl is still awake, mysteriously and intently looking at the man who so easily dealt with the monster. She doesn't know who he is, so she plucks up courage and decides to approach him. The girl comes up from behind and threateningly asks who he is. The guy didn't expect such a reaction. She then explained that chaos is not a simple world, and no one can defeat Bighorn with just one attack. She asks again who he is and where he is from, but the young man only looks at her with interest. He remembered seeing the word on the map and not being able to figure out what it meant, but now he had a chance to get more answers. Huang turns around. They are standing too close. He stares at the girl and asks what chaos means. The red-haired girl was a little confused, finding herself so close to the stranger. After that moment, they all calmly moved together to new territories for Huang. Hyung Nim asks the stranger again and again. He asks if he is here for long. The guy answers in the affirmative. And then, surprised, he asks if he knows the local language, and the guy replies that he does. The man said, as if to himself, but out loud, that this kind of thing doesn't happen here often, and he found it all a little suspicious. The girl asked if they could really take the body of this monster, and the boy calmly replied that he had no rights to it. She finds him very suspicious because the whole situation is extremely strange. Even though he says he came here through the passage, he killed that monster himself without using any skills. The girl tried to use her abilities on him, but the system gave her an error and indicated that the skill could not be used. She was a little surprised that even her strength couldn't help her stop this guy somehow. The system noted that verification was impossible, and the girl assumed that the guy was probably outside the system. She is very concerned about who this man is and why he came here, so she has several questions for him. So I decided to explain that chaos is not such a simple place, and no one can kill this monster with a simple attack. Then she bombarded the guy with questions, and he looked around with surprise and great interest. But of all these questions and explanations from the girl, only one word, chaos, interested the creator. However, this made the girl very angry, and she asked if he was serious or just joking. And then she decided that maybe he didn't understand what she was saying because she asked who he was. Was it really that hard for him to understand? But the main character explains that he understands everything perfectly and hears perfectly well what she asks him about. The boy remembers his life on Earth, his family and friends, and realizes that his whole life on Earth has lost its meaning after the appearance of the Great Tower. And then, during his life in the Tower of Terror, he made new friends and loved ones. He had many wonderful and very touching memories associated with these people, but after completing his studies, they disappeared like a mirage. All of these people are still alive somewhere on Earth, and he could retain all of their memories if he started the game over. But they won't remember him or their adventures, so this venture will most likely be useless, and they will have a hard time coping with the loss. The guy decided not to tell this whole long and complicated story, and decided to say that he simply didn't remember anything. The girl looked at the boy with affection and asked sympathetically if he really had amnesia, and then she aggressively asked if he really thought she would react that way, and if he could at least try to convince her that he had amnesia. The protagonist noted that he did not say that he had amnesia, and the girl was convinced that it was the same thing, but suddenly, someone asked if he was from the mighty abyss. Just as he was thinking about what they meant, his ice sword suddenly reminded him of itself. His weapon grew considerably larger and opened its dragon mouth as the boy rummaged through his bag. The girl looked at the sword in surprise and realized that this guy had a super weapon. So she comes to the conclusion that it's all about the superweapon and not its mighty power, while the guy is feeding the sword with iron blades. The men nearby look at the superweapon with great interest, as it is a very valuable artifact. The main character is fiddling with his weapon. He doesn't even notice that hungry eyes are watching him. Red is mad at Huang for ruining her assignment. She had a great plan, and she would have done a great job with it. As she thought about this, an idea came to her mind on how to turn this situation to her advantage. Now she talks to the guy differently, explains that she will no longer ask him questions and wants to offer him something. But with a sly expression on her face, she mysteriously asks if he wants to listen to her proposal. The girl introduced herself as Mino and told me in detail about chaos and how everything works here. And then they moved on to discussing the people around her, this suspicious crew of guys called the Red Fox. From her story and transparent hints, the protagonist understood that Mino wanted him to kill them. The girl noted that they would soon get to him, so there was no point in looking so closely at these scoundrels. One of the men noticed that it was getting dark, so it was not worth going further, so as not to disturb the monsters. So they decided to stay where they were and spend the night in the open air in the middle of the forest. Jae Hwan lies under a tree and looks at the map. According to the map, there is a settlement not far from here. The card magically turned into gold particles and disappeared. This is the advantage of the game. The boy lies quietly and plays with these particles. He sharply clenches his fist, trying to catch something. Through the system, the men saw that their guest was in the second stage of awakening, called knowledge, and his energy level was very low. They calculated that his energy level was much lower than their leaders, so they realized that he had defeated the monster only thanks to his weapon. But they know that super weapons can only be obtained in the abyss. These are the branches of the Tree of Illusions. Huang heard everything and realized that these scoundrels were up to something. They would be surprised when they found out that this was where he got this weapon. The tower owner said it wasn't a very impressive weapon, so they probably wouldn't want to hunt for it. The protagonist looks at the stars in the cloudless sky and thinks about how to get to the almighty earth. The Red Fox Legion fighters were already confidently moving towards the boy. Huang realizes that they have already started to implement their plan, and soon everyone will be here. Mino is shocked and asks the guy why he is lying there so calmly, because those bastards are going to come for him now. The girl tries to convince the young man to use his powerful weapon against them. But Jae Hwan calmly turned to Mino and explained that he did not have any weapons with him. He explained that he had lent his sword to someone on the night shift, but the girl was furious and couldn't believe he had done that. He was surrounded by many people. The leader stated that he would find a better way to use his weapon, although the girl noted that even with this weapon, he was a complete zero. Mino is not as simple and sweet as she seems at first glance. She asks these idiots if they really want bloodshed. The main character looked at the girl with genuine interest, and now saw her true nature, and it seemed that he liked it. Instead, all these people follow the orders of their leader, who threatens to kill them. The redhead doesn't wait for Huang to do something. She knows how to stand up for herself. She uses her skills skillfully. The girl throws blades well, and the first two were all convinced of this. And the girl doesn't even think about stopping after them, and immediately finds a new victim. Mino is actually a very skilled and intelligent girl. She holds her weapon tightly and is ready to use it again. The dagger flies towards one of these villains with insane speed and force. The protagonist stands proudly next to her and does nothing, apparently believing that she can handle it herself. And that's true, Mino can definitely handle this bunch of losers on his own. They seem to already realize what they've gotten themselves into and probably regret their decision, but it's too late because they've already made her angry. She smiled sarcastically and stated that by their decision, they had doomed themselves to a terrible fate. Their leader stands behind the rest of the Legion and admits that he knew she was a witch from the start. This became obvious when she unceremoniously set the monster on them. The man frowned and asked aggressively through clenched teeth who had approached the ghost warrior. Mino smiled cheerfully and sincerely and playfully asked what difference it made to him who did it. But she added that these bastards had killed so many newcomers who didn't understand anything that many of the Chaos inhabitants probably wanted them dead. Instead, Heng Nim noted that the ghost warriors would not help these unfortunate people. And then, with one movement, he repelled all the sharp daggers that were rapidly approaching him. The man pulled out a weapon that belonged to Jae Hwan and threatened that this witch would die right there. Although it didn't particularly frighten her, Mino muttered hesitantly, "Was he really counting on just a super weapon?" But the cunning man smiled slyly and explained that he had an ulterior motive. The girl looked around and was a little surprised by what she saw, although she noted that they were all at least level 1 in strength. Now I could see even more people around, hiding behind trees and bushes, waiting for the right moment. The girl explained that she immediately felt that there were many more of them than it seemed at first glance. The leader asked if she really thought he would go into battle unprepared, especially if he had to fight a witch's ghost and a boy who had killed that monster with one blow. But he would have acted differently if he had known that he would get this amazing superweapon so easily. He wouldn't have gone that far or called so many people for help, but it's already been done. The girl asks in surprise if Black Fox is really here too. It seems like nothing interesting is happening in his life right now. This man, who just now stood out in no way, has now turned into a real monster. He declared with his huge tongue and fangs that she could consider this an honor. Black Fox Clan, who is the head of the Red Fox Clan and holds the 3rd degree, explained that more than half of the clan was gathered here. She is not very pleased with the honor done to her and asks them to wait a little, as they still have so much time to gather here. Mino feels that she can't handle this monster alone, so she turns to Jae Hwan. She doesn't want to admit it, but she has to admit that she can't protect him. So she throws a stone to the boy and tells him to grab it and run, and the boy realizes that it is a terrible stone. The girl explained that it was a return stone, and if you used it, you could move to the nearest fortification or fortress. But she added that she only has it, so he can use it without any problem, although the guy is a little confused. Now he realized that this stone does not return you to the past, it saves you in the present. He immediately remembered his friend from the Tower of Horrors, who did not use this thing. Jae Hwan thinks that he should have given Yoon Hwan that stone, and maybe then he would have survived. A guy asks his new friend if she had the opportunity to go back in time. Would she do it? At first, she was angry because now was not the time to ask such questions, since their lives were literally hanging by a thread. And then she still answered that, of course, she would not return, and this greatly surprised the main character. The witch turned around and smiled cheerfully, noting that she had worked hard all her life. She has nothing to regret, and she will never return to the past, even if she dies in this battle today. This answer seemed to surprise Jae Hwan because he moved closer to Mino and placed his hand on her shoulder. The guy stood next to her and declared that she would not die today, and reached for his weapon. His reaction surprised the girl. She did not expect him to protect her or take part in the fight. Without warning, he threw something to the ground, sending up a column of smoke and blue sparks. Jae Hwan uses his strength and easily deals with the attackers. The Black Fox shouted that he was using the Flame King's 14 transformations. After these words, the monster's hands caught fire, and the swords of his subordinates were engulfed in flames. The protagonist does not appear embarrassed or scared after what he saw. He has a plan, and he is preparing to use the lost spell to get rid of all these fools. The guy copes with all this evil without any problems. No one even has time to understand what happened. The protagonist came face to face with the strongest of them. He tried to wound him with a sword, but the monster held him back with his hand. But this did not stop him for long, as Hwang proved stronger and pierced his clawed hand. And as a result, the boy's weapon passed through the flesh of this monster, although Black Fox did not expect this. It turns out that Heng Nim remained alive, although the head of the Red Fox clan took up residence in his body. Jae Hwan looks back and stands proudly in front of the very scared man. The poor man, overcome with fear, fell on his knees and humbly handed over the weapon to its owner. The remaining members of this gang realized that after the death of their leader, they were powerless here, and quickly fled. Although the main character will not give them such joy, he holds the weapon firmly in his hands and is ready to take revenge. He uses a light lunge and effortlessly destroys anyone in his path. Mino is shocked and very scared. She cannot understand how this is even possible. She remembers how easily he gave up the monster's body, and then she thought he was just a fool. She felt like he didn't understand anything when he bragged about his superweapon. And when he said he just gave his gun to some stranger, she thought he was an idiot with no sense of self-preservation. But everything turned out completely differently. This stranger turned out to be very strong and cunning. When Hwang finished, he looked back and saw Mina with a very surprised expression on her face. She cannot understand who he is and why he came here, and asks him about it again. The guy is in no hurry to answer her questions directly. It seems he likes to maintain a sense of mystery. He smiles at her and cheerfully asks if she has forgotten about him. The warrior replies that she already knows who he is, but this greatly surprises Mino, and her face shows that she does not understand what he is talking about. Hwang teases the girl by asking if she has memory problems. He thought he was the only one with such a problem, but this remark angered her. However, Mino decided not to discuss it further and asked him to return the stone to her, but he admitted that he had lost it. The poor thing is seething with rage and cannot believe that he could lose such a precious thing. They are sitting by the fire and relaxing after a very eventful evening. The young man sits quietly and looks at the stars. It calms him down. He feels peace and bliss. Instead, the girl tries to find her stone in his bag, but it seems to be in vain, and she fails. So she gets angry that all this is happening because of some stranger. The guy noticed that she already knew everything, so there was no need to ask him questions, but she didn't quite understand what he was talking about. Hwang explains that he knows who he is, and looking at the fire explains that he is an ordinary person. He then asks his interlocutor if she is human, and she reluctantly replies that she is almost human. Then the boy thought of something, clenched his fist tightly and replied that it was good. This seemed a little strange to her, so the girl wondered what he was thinking about now. And then, realizing that the guy wouldn't say anything else, she turned away and thought about something of her own. She wondered if it really was necessary to be just a human to become so strong and skilled. The girl asks if he has really forgotten everything that happened to him on Almighty Earth, and Hwang confirms that he does not remember anything. Then she bowed her head sadly and remarked that he was very lucky that he had forgotten everything. Most people here would envy him. And she added that it was obvious how they all ended up there and why. but the guy didn't understand why it should be obvious. But he asks with interest how she ended up here, and the girl stops when she hears this. She gave him a sly look and noticed that he would immediately regret his question as soon as he knew the answer. They achieved their goal. The girl took him to a very beautiful place, which turned out to be the Gorgon's palace. They approach the building and Mino notices that they have arrived at their destination. Huang carefully examines the entire new territory and tries to understand what kind of place this is. The circular space with columns reminded him of the first floor of the Tower of Terror, where newcomers came. The square was completely empty and there was not a soul around, but suddenly a red light came on. And then something very strange happened, which really scared the main character. He didn't expect it. He saw many people suffering, crying from pity or writhing in pain. These were the last seconds of their lives. Mino noticed that there were 1,000 times more of them this time and added, "Does he now understand how she got here?" But frowning, she added in a threatening voice that he should never ask her that question again. The poor people in the round square are still screaming and writhing in pain, and the girl, lowering her head, noticed that they were in chaos in the kingdom of the dead. If you die on the almighty earth, you will go to chaos. But if you die here, that's the end. The soul will turn into nutrients for the illusion tree. At this moment, men in white boots appear and rush to do their job. Their uniforms are white with gold trim, and the captain orders them to line up and escort. They rush to meet people who have just arrived. Their job is to welcome them. The captain wrapped one of the new arrivals in a warm blanket and noted that he looked very weak, which was probably the cause of his death. The captain's name is James, and he was called to point out the two waiting on board. He asks why the girl came through the north entrance, to which she replies that since they are acquainted, she would be glad if he let her in earlier. The captain apologizes, but things have changed, and now everyone who enters the fortress must have their documents checked. Mino looks back and asks if Huang has an older brother card, but the boy shakes his head, indicating that he doesn't have one. The girl understood everything, and looked at her new acquaintance with suspicion. She turned to James and tried to explain in a flattering manner that she had forgotten her ID. Then she handed him a bighorn horn and asked if this one would suit him. It worked. The captain picked up the phone and basically stated that he checked the paperwork and everything was fine. The man asks Huang to show him his documents, but he explains that he has no identification and asks what he should do. Mino looked at her friend and said that if he asked her for help, she would resolve this situation. Instead, James reiterated that entry into the fort without identification was strictly prohibited. Huang briefly replied that he understood them, and the girl looked at him in horror and asked what he was going to do. She thought he would kill all the guards to get inside. The girl knows that he is not quite normal, and seems to have some mental problems, but she doubts that he will ever get to this point. But this picture of him killing everyone appears very clearly before her eyes, like a terrible dream, so she thinks he's still capable of doing stupid things like that, and that scares her a lot. Mino tries to prevent this from happening, so he suddenly stands in front of the guy and tries to somehow convince James. Suddenly a voice comes from the fortress. Someone asks what is going on here. This really scares the man in uniform. The girl also realizes with horror that they are stuck and will now have serious problems. All the boys immediately lined up in a straight line and greeted the man in unison. He seems to be a respected and very serious figure in Gorgon's Fortress if he is treated like that. Approaching them is the most famous checkpoint captain in Chaos, North Entrance Captain Carlton the Stubborn. He approaches James and asks him sharply what is going on, and James meekly tells him. The captain rubs his beard and thinks about what to do if this man wants to enter without permission. And then he categorically states that it is impossible. Huang asks why, but the man does not understand why he is asking this. His eyes lit up blue and he read Section 4 of Article 37, which states that if there are problems with identity verification, they have the right to refuse entry to the guest. He used the skill Law of Fortress, and everyone knelt and bowed their heads before the captain. Mino doesn't really like that he used that skill. It seems like those knots are giving her a headache. However, during the lesson, the protagonist holds the sword firmly in his hand, and this skill does not affect him in any way. Huang noticed that the girl was not feeling well, so with one movement of his weapon he easily cut the knots on her head and arms. The boy shouted sharply for him to stop teasing. The captain of the North Entrance, Carlton the Stubborn, could not believe what had happened. Jay Huan stands proudly and stubbornly declares that he doesn't care about their laws at all. And then, without waiting for their reaction, he asks what should be in this certificate. The captain doesn't understand how he managed to untie the knots, but replies that the ID card must indicate the name, status, organization, skills, class, and spirit level. The protagonist replied that in that case he did not need an ID card, since he did not want to confirm his identity. Carlton tries to use the skill Law of Fortress against him again, but it doesn't work. Since this had no effect, the captain declared that he was forced to arrest him on the basis of paragraph 6 of the second article of the serfdom law. But he used another skill against the guest, which is called Silver Shackles. Jae Hwan is chained in silver, but he doesn't look scared. The guy dealt with them surprisingly easily. The chains broke and fell apart. The captain's subordinates are shocked that this guy managed to free himself from the shackles of their respected captain so easily. The man, no less surprised, asks how he managed to do it so easily, because it is impossible to get rid of these chains on your own. Hwang points his finger at Mino and asks if he can do the same as her. This really scared the poor thing, and you can see the fear in her eyes about what might happen to her as a result. She understands perfectly well that in this situation the horn was a bribe, and the chief captain will not like it. But besides her, there is James, who received the bribe, and 2 men who witnessed it. They were also seriously frightened, and cold sweat ran down their foreheads from fear. The girl tried to stop him, but Hwang had already thrown something at the captain at the north entrance. He caught the object in his hand easily and casually, and seemed a little surprised that the boy had done so. The man looks at something in his hand with interest and attention, and Hwang gestures for him to take it and throw it. James is incredibly angry, he shouts how this bastard dared to bribe the captain. However, the man stopped his subordinate and asked the boy if his name was Jae Hwan, and the young man answered in the affirmative. And then he looked him straight in the eye, called him a gossip monger, and said that he had been waiting for him. Mino was scanned by some device and told that her soul was more than 15% destroyed, so she needed to take medicine. The captain explains that her soul has been affected, so he assumes that she knows what to do in this situation. Hwang asks with interest what this destruction of the soul is, and the girl, having taken the medicine, asks if he really doesn't know or understand anything. Soul corruption is a chronic condition quite common among the inhabitants of the house. The soul of everyone who resides here gradually deteriorates and is eventually completely absorbed into the place. That's why the horn of this animal is so valuable, and in the meantime James reports that they have escorted all the newcomers to the village. The bighorn horn is the only thing that can prevent the soul from being destroyed, so this man was happy to receive it. The girl also remembered that thanks to him she received such a valuable horn for free. North Entrance Captain Carlton Stubborn pointed the device at the boy and explained that he would now test him too. It's like some kind of eye-shaped camera that scans a person's face and gives out all the information known about him. The protagonist stands obediently and waits for this thing to tell him something about himself. However, after scanning, she found some error. It seems that this device does not provide any information. The system only showed that the process of destruction of this guy's soul went unnoticed. James and the captain are shocked by this information, as everyone in this city is suffering from soul destruction. And this thing shows 0% destruction, and it makes them wonder who he is. Carlton thought for a second, then smiled slightly and said he understood. The man takes the boy by the hand and explains that he has checked his stone and can now take it back. Hwang asks in surprise if they really don't need this thing, since it seems quite valuable. He addresses him as a messenger of gossip, and explains that the spirit stone is not something to be given to just anyone, but the guy ignores the fact that he is some sort of messenger. But the captain didn't explain anything. He just smiled slightly, and noted that he knew about it. 2 guests entered the fortress, and the captain was asked if they could be let in. Instead, the man asked James if he knew what a spirit stone was, and he explained that it was something that increased spiritual energy. Carlton noted that this was not the only thing worth knowing about this stone, and showed his subordinate something quite shocking. When he took off his white glove, his hand was in a terrible state, and his subordinate asked if it was because of the stone. The captain explained that no one except the messenger of gossip has power over this stone, and only he can bypass the destruction of the soul. Although he doesn't think that this guy is actually the messenger of the gossip, he somehow managed to control the stone. James asks if they can really trust this guy, but the captain explains that he does, deep down. Carlton recalls how he was measuring the level of destruction of his soul, and his subordinate remarked that the device must have broken. But as far as the manager knows, the device is fully functional, and can only show this in one case. This can only happen when his soul is the purest of all that exist in chaos. But James does not understand how this is possible. It doesn't matter whether he is the messenger of the gossip. What matters is that he can control the spirit stone, and what to do with it will be decided by the fortress itself. James asked if this was related to the illness of the owner of this fortress, but the captain of the northern entrance doesn't know about this at all, so he has nothing to say. And then you add that I heard that someone tried to let them through by giving a bribe, and this scared the man. Now he doesn't know what to expect. Huang walks around the fortress grounds, looks around and thinks that the streets here are very confusing. He's also concerned about why this girl is following him and who is in charge here. The captain punished her for not showing her ID and for offering a bribe to a security guard. However, Jae Hwan asked to let her go, so the man complied with this request and let her go, wishing her a good day. The guy doesn't know anything about this city, so he decided to just ask out loud if anyone here knew a good blacksmith. He continues asking questions, shows his sword, and asks if he knows anyone who could help him. Instead, a cunning man appeared who seemed to want to profit from the fool. The walk through the city dragged on, and it seemed they had entered some dark alley. It seems that the girl is already beginning to come to her senses after the captain cast his spell on her. Finally, she feels better and asks how long they have been walking and living in this settlement. The protagonist is glad that she feels better, because finally she won't be following him everywhere, so he wishes her luck and says goodbye. But Mino can't believe that he's just leaving her like that and asks him to wait for her. Huang explains that he has entered the fortress, and now he no longer needs help. He looks back at his friend and casually adds that now she will only be a hindrance to him. The guy explained that they were too different to turn their acquaintance into a strong friendship. So he suggests that she go her own way, and this is where their paths diverge. The girl froze in surprise. She could not find words because she was very surprised by his decision. It seems like she doesn't want to part with Huang at all, so she's in no hurry to leave him. Suddenly, a sharp and very loud scream of a girl was heard in the tunnel. She asked the boy to stop. Mino tries to convince the guy that he doesn't know where to go, and that without her, he will definitely have a lot of problems. The young man explained that he could always ask passers-by, but the girl suggested that he ask her, since she knew everything here. Huang seemed to realize that she wouldn't be easy to get rid of, so he seemed to have resigned himself to having her as his companion. Since she had already insisted and said that she knew everything here, he explained that he needed a break now. The girl enthusiastically said that she knew where to find him and asked if she could take him there, to which the guy replied that it would be very appropriate. Suddenly, the guy reached for his bag and said that it looked like they had other things to do first. Now they have to settle some issues with people who are interested in the alien to these lands. They are blocked by guys with sly smiles and asked if he has that beautiful sword that has heat in it or something like that. Mino warns these fools to get out of the way if their lives matter, but the boys don't take her words seriously. She was called rude and warned to watch her swearing. The men explained that the youngest of them had reached adolescence and was highly sensitive to any rude behavior, but they threatened that if they want to get out of here alive, they must pay, so let them give up the sword. Huang calmly replies that he does not agree with their terms, and Mino is shocked by their youngest son. The robbers stand proudly and wait for the right moment to begin their reprisal against these two. But the girl is still under the impression of this overgrown man and claims that he cannot be the youngest and accuses them of lying. The Mountain of Muscles no longer waits for a command from his minions. He quickly approaches them. Approaching the girl, he swung his axe and declared that her rudeness would be punished. But suddenly a sword appeared right in front of her. It seemed that her new friend decided to save her. Huang took away both of the emotionally unstable man's arms in one motion. This shocked and frightened the other robbers, and they froze in their places for a second. The bushes fell at Huang's feet, and he noticed that everything here was very noisy, something he was not used to. The guy holds his weapon tightly at the ready. He knows perfectly well that this fight will not end here. Jae Hwan seems to be confident in his abilities and is not at all afraid of scammers who enjoy profiting from others. He stands with a cold gaze and a threatening voice, calling for them to come forward and begin the fight. Their youngest lies and whines in pain. He no longer poses any threat. The others scream in rage. How dare he raise his hand against their little brother? They are bombarded with threats and curses, and promise that they will never forgive him for this. But everyone comes forward and shouts that they will show them what true friendship and support are. Instead, the protagonist stands calmly and waits for them to approach. He has no doubt that he will easily cope. It didn't last long. His sword was already dirty, and finally there was peace and quiet around him. The girl is delighted with how easily the guy dealt with the attackers. She is impressed and thinks about how strong his other skills are, but he explained that he only knows how to lunge. Mino was surprised at first, but then she remembered that her other friend also only used one skill, but in his case it was defense. And then she asked why he blew off the roof of the house, because she thought that this blow was unnecessary. The protagonist recalls all these events and tries to collect his thoughts in order to try to explain them clearly. Hwang recalls that during the fight, he realized that one of the attackers was using an invisibility skill, and so he just wanted to scare him because he really irritated him. The girl asks in surprise what kind of normal person would destroy the roof of a house just to scare people, but the guy, in his defense, explains that, in his opinion, this is completely normal. They continued on their way, and along the way the girl suggested that the guy name his blows in a very pretentious way, but Hwang did not like it. They reached the Twilight Strike, the most famous and best forge in the entire settlement. They come closer, and one of the blacksmiths asks if they need help. Master Naven explained that they were very busy right now, and if they ordered anything today, they would have to wait a bit. Mino asks why they have so many orders, and the guy replies that only the deputy owner of the forge is on shift today, and they have a lot of work. However, he added that it would be easier for them to buy a finished product than to wait for the order to be ready. At this time, all the craftsmen are busy examining the dagger made from the horn of a quadriga, and they have to make a slot for the handle. His assistants shout to each other that they want to help with the work with such a legendary dagger. Michael Gernard, assistant forge manager, noted that the horn is not easy to break, making it a challenging task. But he decides to play a game with them, and makes a bet that whoever of them can make a hole for the handle in this dagger will become the owner of the forge's assistant for the whole day. The first volunteer is actively trying to do this. He has made every effort, but he is not succeeding. The assistants take turns trying to make a hole, but they can't do it. The horn is very strong. The deputy is angry that these guys are so weak and can't even scratch him. Hwang saw all this and decided to try his hand too, although Naven tried to stop him. He tried to convince the guy that he shouldn't go there, and Michael heard him. The main character boldly enters the forge and asks to be allowed to try his hand. The blacksmith thinks that the boy might think this is an easy task because his assistants failed to do it, but Hwang knows full well that this horn is made of materials that are difficult to work with. He added that it was not that they were losers, but that he was extremely experienced and had his finger on the pulse. What happened next left the deputy blacksmith completely stunned, and he was so shocked that he couldn't even move. The man can't figure out how this guy did it, and what tricks he has. Jae-hwan didn't use any tools, but simply made a hole in the corner with his finger. The boy proudly asks if he can now become the deputy head of the forge for one day. But suddenly cracks appear around the finger on the precious and rare horn. The blacksmiths watch in shock, wondering if he could really destroy such a strong material with just one finger. Michael Gernard is furious. He can't believe this idiot broke this thing. He is ready to tear the guy to pieces and shouts that this is a very expensive thing, and how dare he break it. The protagonist justifies himself by saying that he thought he had calculated his strength, and Mino seems to be getting great pleasure from watching all of this. Now the guy understands that it is easy to break it, but difficult to make a hole in a certain part, and he replies that he is sorry. The blacksmith was still terribly angry. He asked if he really thought his apology would help them in any way. He tries to explain that it is a very expensive thing, and now he doesn't know what to tell his client. Hwang promised to compensate for his loss with an even better horn, but Michael finds it hard to believe. The guy put his hand in his bag and tries to find exactly what he needs now. He pulled out the real horn and handed it to the blacksmith, who was shocked to see it. But he explained that it was a horn with 5 horns, and as far as he knew, it was a little better than what they had. The man holds this amazing thing in his hands and realizes that it is a real horn of the 5-horned harnick. The protagonist asks if this is enough and explains that he doesn't have another horn right now. The blacksmith is shocked by all this and remarks that this would be quite suitable. The boy sighed with relief and asked if he could stay in their forge for a while. Blacksmith Michael looked at him menacingly and ordered his assistants to close the front door. The young men, still shocked by what they saw, unanimously declare that they will immediately fulfill his request. Jae-hwan continues on his way, where he is led by the deputy head of the Twilight Attack Forge. There's a sign on the door that their forge is closed, and Mino wasn't invited inside, so she'll have to go somewhere alone. This forge is considered the best in Gorgon Fortress, and since the boy is currently acting as deputy, he can use any tools and materials. The guy modestly thanked him, and Michael asked with interest where he got this horn. The protagonist, preparing to start work in the forge, briefly replied that he had received it. The man asked if he had managed to destroy the pentagram on his own, and the young man confirmed that he had. Huang asked for help, and explained that he needed a sheath for his sword, while the blacksmith thought about how rare it was to meet such a young man. The blacksmith very carefully placed the extremely rare and expensive horn on the table, but he was shocked, and asked if this guy was really going to use Harnack's horn for his vagina. The protagonist pulled a sword out of his bag, and the blacksmith, at first surprised, exclaimed that this was such a weapon. And when he picked it up, he assumed that it was a copy of the ice dragon sword, and added that it was very beautiful and rare. After thinking for a while, the man explained that making a sheath for such a powerful weapon would be quite difficult, and that it would be better to make a new sword out of this horn. Suddenly, completely unexpectedly for Michael, the sword opened its mouth and swallowed the very precious and rare five-horned horn. This is the second time today that such a horn is destroyed before his eyes, and he justifies himself because he did not think it was a spiritual weapon. But he is so fascinated by this amazing weapon that he has no time to grieve over what is lost. After looking around for a bit, he realized that this sword had evolved, and due to the great evolution, it was changing its shape, after which Huang had to give it a new name. Because after a great evolution, every spiritual weapon loses its original name. Michael regrets that the horn swallowed the sword, but the guy calms him down and explains that it doesn't matter because he still has the sword, and he calls the sword a pig's snout. Not even a few minutes had passed when Cavalia took the horn in his hands again, and shocked, asked how this was possible. But the guy noticed that this monster had 5 horns and added that it was obvious. Having come to his senses a little, Koval asked how he could help, and the main character explained that he wanted to see how he worked on this material. He was ready to start work, and asked if his client had already thought about the form. Huang explained that since Michael is the best master here, he can solve this problem himself. He trusts him. The man is impressed by such trust and is ready to show everything he is capable of and do his job in the best possible way. The action takes place in the main building of this place, in the powerful and very beautiful Gorgon Fountain. There is a very calm atmosphere. The man is enjoying warm and aromatic tea. As he sipped his drink, his subordinate told him regretfully that he was very sorry. The man knelt down in front of the owner and told him that they had beaten up all the bandits, and then he lost sight of his target. Gorgon Fortress Minister Jurgen Jaeber thought for a moment about this guy's words, but he is interested in how he lost them. The man replies that it is difficult for him to say specifically. He only knows that he lost consciousness, and when he came to, he found himself on the roof. The minister asked in surprise if the target had been able to detect or somehow sense his presence. The man thought for a moment, since he was able to experience a high-level 3 invisibility skill, then he himself must be at least level 5. Jurgen Saber ordered his subordinate to gather as many people as possible and search the entire territory of the fortress. The man left the office, leaving the minister alone with his thoughts. Suddenly he felt a severe headache, frowned, and clenched his teeth. A strange sensation permeates his entire body. He feels every muscle tense. The table he was sitting at swayed and the tea almost spilled out of the beautiful porcelain cup. His legs felt like cotton wool. They didn't obey him at all, but on the contrary, they pressed tightly against the chair. The minister, exhausted, banged his fist on the wooden table and tried with all his might to pull himself together. Overcoming the unbearable pain, he asked the owner of the fortress to be patient and wait a little longer. Meanwhile, at the local bar, as usual, alcohol was flowing and people were drinking no matter what. People sit quietly at tables, eat their ordered dishes, and watch TV. The program Top 10 of this week is coming to an end, and the presenter is a little sad about it. But she still has the latest videos, and the girl assures that each of them has already heard about it. He became very popular in Little Brother, and this video is now being talked about by everyone. It talks about the lonely hero of the 99th floor. People are watching this guy on video and wondering where he is now because the Lord seemed to really like him. There are rumors in the bar that the tower has stopped growing plants, and it is assumed that this happened because the tower's owner was trying to cheat. It is said that the tower was completely destroyed, and its owner fled, although for the demons, this tower was worth a lot of money. The bar's patrons think it would be better to sell it at the market rather than destroy it, and in between conversations they order more drinks. Suddenly the door opens wide and Mino appears, looking very unhappy about something. She walks past all these drunk men. What an impression such a beauty makes here. The girl boldly walks past them and sits down at the bar counter with other visitors sitting nearby. One of them is already quite drunk and tries to flirt with her. He asks if she is alone here. The girl addresses him in a very threatening and aggressive manner, making it clear that she does not want to date anyone. The man immediately realized that it was better not to disturb this sweet girl now, so he moved away. Mino is in a very bad mood right now and can't understand why she is so sad. She takes out the money, gives it to the bartender, and orders herself a liqueur, hoping that it will lift her spirits and make her feel a little better. The girl asks the bartender for more. She wants to drown in alcohol and forget. Not much time has passed, and the girl is already quite drunk and tells the bartender what is bothering her. She drunkenly says that this guy is a terrible weirdo and is making a big deal out of himself. The owner of this tavern, Claire, exhales heavily and notices that the girl hasn't even had time to get drunk yet, and she's already talking nonsense. The woman explained that there were many good men around and asked why she was so attached to him. The girl lowered her head, but the only explanation she had was that he was starting to really irritate her. She remembered him from fights and explained that this guy destroys absolutely everything in his path. It irritates her that he walks around swinging his sword as if he doesn't care about anything at all. Mino tilted her head and remembered how he spoke and what he said, and it all sounded very strange. The trouble is that he speaks to her very poorly and completely incomprehensibly. She was angry with him because he did whatever he wanted, even knowing that he was in the world of chaos. Huang responded that people usually think it's the end, and then added that she is no longer human, and they are very different. Apparently these words really touched her, because the poor thing sadly leaned over her glass and fell silent. She is terribly irritated that this man does not take her seriously and considers her a nobody. The girl noticed that everyone present there was struggling for their lives, and he just appeared out of nowhere. She remembered asking him what he would do when he was horrified, and the boy briefly replied that he wanted revenge. But he didn't explain why he wanted revenge, so the girl thought he was looking down on her. Mino is terribly irritated by his behavior. Next to him, she feels inferior and worthless. Claire noted that she was still just a child and asked her not to go near the man again. But she doesn't understand at all why she needs this, and asks the bartender to explain it to her. The woman looked at the girl with compassion and noted that if she stayed with him, she might die. But Mino asked why she became so serious and thought she might die, and at that moment the door of the bar opened. The golden glow stretched in a beautiful path from the very door to the red head. A golden messenger bird flew in and brought the girl an important letter with a seal. This letter from Captain Carlton Xavier is addressed to the terror of the dark forests of Mino. The girl wondered with surprise why he had written to her, and felt some anxiety as she unpacked the letter. As she read this letter, the girl heard someone behind her asking if she really was the witch who had carried out the massacre. Mino didn't think long and, drawing her blade, replied that it was okay to say that. But at that moment some man grabbed her hand and squeezed it tightly, and the poor thing had to drop the weapon. He explained that he didn't like such rudeness, but he didn't have time for explanations now, and said that she had to help him. Meanwhile in the forge, the men are trying to carry out their plans, but it seems that everything is not so simple. The blacksmith struck the horn, and it was immediately thrown back with great force. He had not expected this at all. Completely unexpectedly and as if out of nowhere, a huge monster appeared. It was that very pentagram. The man is terribly frightened. He cannot take lessons and asks where they can get his horn. The poor guy doesn't understand at all how to do this because the monster is huge and scary. The protagonist noticed this, lifted the man to his feet and asked him to pull himself together. Jae-hwan asked threateningly if he had forgotten that they were already halfway there, and he added that since this man promised to help, then let him fulfill his promise properly. All this happened because the blacksmith persistently tried to break the horn with his tools. But for a long time he couldn't do anything. He was very tired and said that this was too high-level material for him. Huang covered his eyes with his hand and explained that the situation was unequal, noting that the first stage of rebirth is the stage of doubt, which can destroy the essence of the world. The second stage of rebirth is the stage of understanding, that is, the ability to recognize and accept the destroyed world. The blacksmith seemed to discover a strange, secret vision within himself, and looked in amazement at the horn on the table. The thing began to move and seemed to change its structure and shape without any apparent reason. A large black substance begins to rise and form something completely unlike itself, which seriously frightens the man. There was a strong, bright flash that made blacksmith Michael Garnard close his eyes. And when she opened them again, he couldn't believe that what he saw was actually happening. From this strange black matter emerged a huge and terribly evil monster. The man seems to freeze in place from horror and complete incomprehension, and Huang asks him to come to his senses. But he added that since the blacksmith promised to help, he must do it now. Michael is horrified and cannot understand if this monster is really Harnick's horn, and that he used his pathetic skills against it. Suddenly, in the middle of this space, he saw a door. The man thinks that he is sleeping, so he wants to wake up as soon as possible. The blacksmith quickly runs to the door, being completely sure that this is a dream, and Huang does not have time to stop him. The guy just sighed in disappointment and realized that he was useless here. The man quickly ran out of the door and screamed desperately, calling for someone to help. But what he saw there frightened him even more and plunged him into complete stupor. Ugly and scary skeletons slowly approach him, surround him. In fact, it is his assistants in the forge who ask if he has finished his work yet. The man is so overcome with fear that he cannot understand what is happening to him. Suddenly, Michael heard a voice telling him that this fool had no right to be here. The poor guy can't do anything. His forehead is covered in beads of cold sweat, and his whole body begins to shake. The boy has to attack this creature himself, trying with all his might to subdue it. He thrust the instrument into her with all his might, while wondering if this world really existed. Jay Huan has finally achieved success. He forges with confidence, and this material lends itself to him. The horrible creature began to fight back, and the boy wondered how it had managed to get here in the first place. The main character tries his best to hold on to the monster so as not to fall. But it seemed he had already realized that this would be a much more difficult task than he thought. The monster turned out to be quite strong and terribly angry, so the boy decides to jump. He then applies twice as much force to speed up and try again. Huang uses his blacksmith's hammer and deals a blow to the creature that breaks its bones. Meanwhile, Michael cannot come to his senses and screams loudly in shock. There are boundaries in this world that cannot be crossed, and no matter how hard you try, a person will never go beyond his capabilities and reach the level of horror. Michael thinks he's too old to work with Harnick's horn, and the guy should have come to him sooner. He understands that this young man came here to see the owner of the forge, but he has not been here for a long time, and adds that he is sorry that only a loser like him remains in this city. He thinks that he cannot consider himself a true disciple since he has not created a single tower, but Huang reassures him by explaining that he is good with weapons, so he should not give up. And he added that no matter how hard he tried, he could do it 1,000,000 times. But this phrase made the man laugh, because only a young guy could say such a thing. Michael noted that the boy might think he wasn't trying hard enough, but that was not the case at all. Believe it or not, this man tried again and again, but he never gave up. The guy remembers the blacksmith from the tower, who said that he has honed all the skills related to blacksmithing, and can repair all the weapons in the Tower of Horrors, with a probability of 99%. But despite such success, recently he began to be troubled by very strange thoughts. Instead of focusing on the 99% chance of success, he thinks only about the 1% chance of failure and does everything possible to avoid it. Huang noticed that Michael worked harder than the others, but did he know about the principle of craft skill? The skill of the craft of horror appeared much earlier. It existed from the very beginning, like fire and water. But is a person capable of understanding how the world works? Huang asked if he really used this skill without understanding its essence. The blacksmith thought for a moment he had nothing to say or add to his interlocutor. He believed that spiritual power transferred energy to the hammer and the tools adapted to work with the horn. But the boy noticed that if everything was so simple, then why couldn't his subordinates succeed? The blacksmith suggested that it was because they hadn't yet fully mastered the craft. Michael suddenly thought that since the principle of this skill was so simple, there was no point in mastering it. Huang points out that you have no idea what the skill is and continue to use it, and the man defends himself by saying that no one understands how it works. And then he persistently asked if this guy knew how the crafting skill worked. The protagonist calmly replied that he had just figured out how to do it, and reached his finger towards the horn. Under his finger, the material magically begins to melt and change shape. The guy was working on the horn, and asked everyone to look carefully and say what they saw. The blacksmith saw the decomposed particles of matter, but Huang noticed that everything was not so simple. Hard work made his world more stable. Michael doesn't quite understand what he's talking about, but the guy explains that there's nothing wrong with it. But he goes on to say that he doesn't really understand that if it doesn't work even after so many tries, then the problem is not with him, but with the world. Suddenly, the blacksmith remembered a conversation with a monster who explained that his approach worked for monsters, but not for people. The man asks what then is suitable for humans, but the creature does not know and explains that humans cannot achieve anything higher than becoming a disciple. But he still worked hard and tried to achieve this mastery, and it was terrible. And now he doesn't understand what to do, whether this guy is really offering to challenge the world, because this world rewards all efforts. The result justifies the efforts. Huang asked if it was really good, since this world makes you believe in your own inadequacy. The blacksmith is no longer young, but he can still continue the fight. The protagonist asked him to take a closer look and not to believe blindly. The man trusted the boy and looked at the horn carefully. He looked at it for a long time and carefully, and now he saw it, understood the essence and how it all worked, and now it seemed to get through to him. Michael saw the boy fighting the huge monster again, and wondered if he had always known about the existence of this world. This world without deception, where all ranks, skills, and levels don't matter. He finally saw everything for what it really is, and he can't understand how Huang didn't go crazy from this. And then he thought that maybe the blacksmith had gone crazy after all, and he set to work with wild enthusiasm. It looked very inspiring and at the same time frightening. His tools cut into the extremely hard material, causing sparks to fly from his work. After some time, the work was completed, and Jae Hwan had to continue his journey. Here he got everything he wanted, so it's time for him to leave, because the main character still has many adventures ahead. The sword seems to like the scabbard, otherwise it would have eaten it, and Michael asks if the boy has come up with another name for it. But he added that if Huang hadn't thought about it yet and didn't mind, he wanted to offer his own version. The man explained that he was inspired by martial arts and thought the name he came up with sounded cool. It is associated with the ability to enjoy solitude, and it seems that only one name suits this sword: Lonely. At this point they said goodbye. The blacksmith Mikhail kindly wished him a safe journey. They seemed a little sad that he was leaving so soon. But at the last moment the man asks him to stop. He is worried about another question. He puts his hand to his chest and asks with genuine curiosity what he really looks like. He is very curious about how he looks in the eyes of his master, what he is like in the world that Jae Hwan sees. The guy half turned around and briefly replied that he saw a person in him. This answer greatly surprised and greatly pleased the blacksmith of the Twilight Attack Forge, and the boy already set off on his way, boldly passing by all these terrible skeletons. On the city street he was met by Mino, and Huang asked why she was chasing him, but she tried to explain that she was doing it with good intentions. The protagonist looked back and asked if she was up to something sneaky again. The next moment she was already walking next to him and was surprised how he managed to guess so quickly. Without much preamble, Mino suddenly announced that she planned to kill him, and she said it very calmly. And just as calmly, without any fuss, the boy asked what they were going to achieve by this. The girl said that she wanted to take possession of his soul stone and finally live a full life. But when she saw the expression on his face, she realized that he was not joking. She is a little disappointed that he is not impressed at all, so she suddenly gives him the clothes as an apology gift. They walk through the city, and Mino asks what he will do now, since he never got to face this horror. He explained that Michael told him where to find him, so that he would find him and ask about the Tree of Illusions, and then go in search of a way to the abyss. The girl tried to understand what he was going to do, and suggested that he would still get to the abyss, but what would happen next? But Huang said that he was not going to return. And then he added what exactly he was going to do, and this information greatly shocked Mino. She could barely stand on her feet, took a deep breath, and asked in surprise who he was. And then she got very angry, screamed, "Where did he get this from? How could he do this, and who gave him such a right?" She asked why he thought he could do whatever he wanted and didn't care about anyone else. The girl considers him cruel and heartless, and adds that he does not consider others to be people. She explained that she is a human being, even if not very strong, but she is a human being and worthy of respect. Jae Hwan tries to listen to her and understand. He watches the girl carefully. He remembers their first meeting and how she said that if it were fate, she would die today but would not go back to the past. Suddenly he saw her body begin to disintegrate into tiny particles and messages telling her not to be stupid and not to cause trouble. And the next message said that she should lure him, and if she did not keep her promise, the old woman would die. From this, Huang realized that they had a hostage and they needed him, so they wanted to lure him somewhere. The main character noticed someone very suspicious standing on the other side of the road and following them. He thought that he should give his head to some swindler, but it was all in vain. No matter how hard he tries to save people, it will not change anything, and only doubts allow him to see the whole truth about this place. This world is ruled by money and information, and it is also made up of people who have sold their souls for power and wealth. The guy decides to get rid of them and go in search of horrors, while Mino explains that you don't need a big dream to be happy, you just need to appreciate every day you live. She gets terribly angry and thinks that from this point of view he is not a person, and grabs him by the clothes. The girl boldly declared that she did not want to stay with him as long as he had such goals. When she broke up with her boyfriend, she said she hoped to never meet him again. But at the moment when she was saying all this, the guy saw something very strange. Now she begins to look like an ordinary person. He does not understand why this happened. Huang noticed a message that the witch had betrayed them, and all their plans of horror had collapsed. Meanwhile, the girl headed to the bar where she had recently been drinking and sharing her problems. She walked to the door and thought sadly about how this could have happened. She opened the door, apologized to her aunt, and asked if she had kept her waiting. However, the institution looks in a very terrible state. Everything is broken and scattered. This is the work of Maluzga. There's a man standing in the middle of the establishment with a huge sword and his henchmen around him, and the barmaid remarks that she should have stopped her earlier, and she added that this time she would really die because of her. And the man holding Claire threateningly demanded that she shut up. The eldest of the Kim Chunbang brothers, Jenya, asked why the witch killer came alone, since they had an agreement. But she said he was very naive to think that the witch could keep her promise. She prepared her daggers and explained that he would not come because he had gone to destroy the world. And after these words, she abruptly released her weapon to hit as many opponents as possible. This evil man smiled slyly and noticed that this girl had completely gone crazy. But he immediately cast a shadow on her, and in the forests, she was nicknamed the Witch Killer because of her ability to lure creatures. Jenny is very curious to see how she will cope with these shadows he casts on her. It looks like he wants to see an interesting show. Meanwhile, Mino is doing well. She has learned to avoid the shadows and not give in to any of these creatures. These creatures are no match for such a strong witch. The girl does a somersault and throws her daggers. The man realized that if he wanted to win her over, he would have to put in some effort. So he decided to use his powerful weapon and made several powerful attacks with it. His movements formed a powerful cross, which was now rapidly approaching the poor girl. It's as if he has Mino chained up and she's trying her best to break free. Meanwhile, this man was preparing to approach the witch who had caused the massacre and believed that he had already won. The girl has freed herself from his power, but it is as if she has burned herself, and she regrets that this is happening far from the fortress. The eldest of the Kim Chunbang brothers noted that the soundproofing was good here, so there was no point in shouting. But she had one last chance to bring the boy here. But she is not going to do this, and threatens that the dark forest will take revenge on them for her. The man said that by the time the fort found out what they were doing there, they would both be dead. Mino used her skill, Akaram's 7 swords, and added ice defense. Such skill impressed her opponent, so he noticed that she looked good, and he didn't expect her to be so strong. But these skills mean almost nothing to him, and the man promises to tear his opponent apart with his bare hands. The poor thing can't resist his strength. She's in pain, and it's hard for her to keep from falling. The girl holds on with all her might, her eyes almost closing. She wants this to be the end. And the last thought that came to her mind was the question of whether she would go back in time if she had the opportunity. And only now did she realize that she wanted to return so as not to leave Huang again. She stood before her assailant, who was ready to take her life, and wondered if she would witness the decline of this world. As soon as the man raised his weapon, his sword was reflected in the blue light of the ice sword. Jenny's followers are surprised by what happened and did not expect anyone to stop them from doing their dirty work. But a guy walks into the bar with confident steps. Now they won't be able to do what they want so easily. Mino is very happy that he came, but ironically says that she doesn't like it when people interrupt her so abruptly and asks why he came, sacrificing his plans. At first she thought he had come to save her, but the boy immediately threw a bundle of clothes into her hands and explained that they were too small for him. The men are glad to see him here because he has made their task easier and has come to their aid himself. The main character looked at them. and the only thing that interested him was whether they knew where this horror was. And then he decided to put the question differently. He demands that these bandits bring this horror to him. One of them said he heard that he had broken the rules of the fortress, and it seemed to be true. Mino warned them and noted that he was on level 4, so he shouldn't be underestimated. The gang leader went on the attack and was ready to show this simpleton what real strength is. Jae-hwan is ready to take the hit and convince this smug fool that he is wrong. The protagonist used his super weapon and aimed it at his opponents. Jenny somehow managed to dodge the protagonist's signature attack. Hwang raised his eyebrows and was very surprised that the man managed to avoid the blow. The opponents are surprised. They thought he was just an ordinary newbie, and now they assume that he can become the champion of the abyss. The guy remembered that the only one who managed to avoid his blow was the pentagram, so he and this person were on the same level. But he doesn't care because in the end the monster gave up, and Hwang will still fight. The protagonist looks confident and completely calm, while Mino is very scared. The girl is very worried about her Aunt Claire, who is still being held hostage and threatened. The gang leader realized that his rival was stronger than he expected, and decided to scare them by telling them that their hostage would die. The woman screams for them to attack without delay, but at that moment one of the bandits gives her a hard slap and tells her to shut her mouth. The girl tries to calm the woman down, and explains that she needs to be patient a little longer, and she will be saved right away. She turns to her friend and hopefully asks if he will help save her. But he doesn't understand why she's asking him about this, because the guy came here only to see this horror. The main character is confident that he will destroy everyone in his path, regardless of who is nearby. Mino tries to stop him and begs him to save the woman because Claire is also human. Jae-hwan looked at his girlfriend and clearly saw her as a person, no matter where she was. He slowly turns his gaze to those standing in front of him and sees something completely different. There are only skeletons in front of him, but Claire yells at him to stop thinking and attack. Suddenly he begins to see this woman as a real, normal person. It looks like he'll have to save her now, even though he didn't plan on it at all. He then decides to raise his sword and direct all its power upwards towards the roof of this building. A huge jet of energy burst through the roof and shot high into the air, attracting everyone's attention. This was noticed in the fortress as well, and they looked around in surprise and did not understand what was happening here. The captain of the north entrance also noticed it and seemed very interested in what it was, so he immediately orders his subordinates to head to where this light is coming from. It turns out that there was some strange magical dome above the house, created by the smoke of the villains. They realized that they were now in trouble because Hwang had broken the barrier of silence. Immediately after this, people in uniform appeared and were ordered to cordon off the area. The captain and his subordinates suddenly burst into the almost destroyed bar and arrived here very quickly. The captain looked around. He immediately realized that Jae-hwan should be here and asked threateningly what was going on. The main character reported that this man was brazenly violating the laws of the fortress. The guy did not go into details, but he has an assumption that he violated paragraph 4 of Article 276 of the Criminal Code. But he added that this man probably wanted to unite with horror and destroy this world. But Mino is shocked because this was Hwang's plan. The captain arrests them under paragraph 4 of Article 174 and paragraph 6 of Article 124 of the Criminal Code. The bandits are not very happy that they want to be arrested, so their leader gives the order to flee. However, the man is not going to let them go so easily and uses his silver chains skill. He immediately grabbed himself with 2 bandits who really wanted to break free, but couldn't. The man is not going to stop there, because he still has to catch the leader of the gang. So he takes out his gun and warns them that their best option would be to surrender. However, Zhenya seems to be confident in her abilities and is not going to surrender to the law so easily. He drew his weapon and was ready to fight the captain, just so that he would not be put in prison. A battle between 2 rather strong opponents takes place under a huge hole in the roof. Neither of them is going to give in to the other. Neither of them is ready to lose. The gang leader waves his weapon wildly and shouts furiously, demanding that it burn with a blue flame. However, the captain is not afraid of empty threats. He uses his silver chain skill. The man wielded it skillfully as he instantly and effortlessly tied his opponent's hands. But he threw him to the ground with all his strength, so that the man would not be tempted to continue the fight. Zhenya realized with despair that he had no choice. He was already completely defeated. The captain pinned him to the ground. The man sighed heavily and admitted that he was now giving up. The warrior leader is glad that the man surrendered and notes that it was a rather wise decision on his part. But suddenly, Completely unexpectedly, one of the villains threw a lighter at Carlton. She falls into the middle of the room and begins to do exactly what she was thrown there for. Black and acrid smoke filled the entire building, making it difficult to breathe and understand what was happening. The man watches the house from afar, the smoke from which has already cleared a little. He did not think that he would have to take such measures. One of the bandits seemed to have inhaled the smoke. If you inhale a lot of it, you can die. He turned to the man and aggressively asked how he dared to use black smoke without consulting their leader. The leader of the Forbidden Paradise clan, the wanted warrior Hexal Ran, did not comment on this, as he was more impressed by the witch's skill and remembered that they had promised to bring her to him. The boys explained that the witch was not to blame because they used silver amulets against them. Only now did Hyuksol realize that Juan was there too, and he was glad that the boy had inhaled that smoke and thought he was already dead. However, as soon as he thought about it, he noticed something near the building that surprised him. Jae Hwan emerges from the building unharmed with his friend, the witch Mino. It looks like he used his super weapon to avoid the harmful effects of the smoke. But as soon as he came out, he immediately noticed these scoundrels on the tree, and with one swing of his sword cut down the thick trunk. They are extremely shocked, and do not understand how this guy's spirit did not decompose under the influence of black smoke. The man suggested that it might be a messenger, but he had never seen them without antennae before. Huang looked around and made sure the girl was okay and could stand on her own so he could finish his work. The clan of Scum is already wary and wondering why this guy came to the house. Instead, the protagonist took out his super weapon, and thinking that they were terribly annoying him, prepared to engage in a fight. Huang is very serious, so he will not lose this fight. He unsheathes his sword, and he really didn't think it would come to this. He summons the monster hidden within this sheath using the technique Garnek's Greatness. It's clear that no one expected this. They were hoping to defeat this guy very easily. But now they have to face not only a guy with a super weapon, but also a giant and terrifying monster. Before they could recover from what they had seen, the boy and the monster had already attacked several of them. The protagonist calmly walks past the lifeless bodies lying in his path. He looks very menacing and scary, and his weapon radiates terrible fury and ruthlessness. The head of the Forbidden Paradise clan, Hyuxiol Ran, looks at the boy with fear and cannot understand what kind of monster this is. And then he probably realized that this creature was much stronger than him, and he didn't want to deal with it, so he just ran away. Zhenya realized that he was left practically alone with a guy he didn't even know anything about. Zhang Man and Zhang Meng were unable to withstand Huang's strength and so lost the battle. The man immediately lost two of his subordinates and friends. He cannot believe that everything turned out this way. The protagonist approached him and explained that he had a chance to save his life. He just needs information about where they are hiding this horror, and then he will let him go. The man knows that if he tells everything now, his life will lose all meaning, because if he finds out about the betrayal, he won't just let it go. Jae Hwan became very curious about who Zhenya was referring to, and who would take revenge on him for this. The bastard took another look at all his comrades who had just died and realized that there was no other way out. He already understood everything perfectly well. He knows that in any case he is destined to die. So the man boldly takes the blue stone out of his pocket and eats it. The guy recognized this stone. He is 100% sure that it is a soul stone. At first glance, it may seem that all people living in chaos are attached to some objects. But these are not drugs. As it may seem at first glance, they must be taken to prevent the complete destruction of the soul. After all, no one wants to die. That's the point of this place, and this man risked everything he had. After he did this, he was overcome with unbearable pain, and his eyes seemed to grow larger. Strange long shoots, similar to tree roots, begin to emerge from the body. The man's body has completely changed. It is getting bigger. Something is happening that is completely different from what he expected. The city's residents are terribly frightened. They have never seen anything like this. Instead of dying, he turned into a huge monster. This creature is very frightening to those around him. The creature is very angry, and there is absolutely nothing left of Jenny. Now he will be like this. His rage knows no bounds. The monster mercilessly grabs everyone he sees in his path. And after him, only lifeless bodies remain, scattered throughout the streets of the Gorgon Fortress. The frightened residents run away in horror. They do not want to be left without their souls, which they value so much. And Zhenya finally sees the true essence of this world. Now he knows that there is nothing good here, so he does not need to be afraid to die and give up his soul. Now he knows that he held on to all this in vain, but he could be truly free. This being is now satisfied. Now it has no fear because it has nothing to lose. The monster didn't see where Jae Hwan was, but now he finally found him and promised to destroy him. The boy stands boldly and proudly before the monster, and it is already stretching out its limbs towards him. Now he can see the world as it really is, and the boy in this world looks like an ordinary person, not like a skeleton. Zhenya is surprised that he is a real person, and does not understand how he could end up here. Instead, the protagonist stares at the creature and has no idea what is happening to it. Huang tried to use his doubt skill, but it didn't help him figure out who he was. But now he doesn't have time to think about it. So the guy gave up on this idea. The protagonist points his weapon at the monster, showing that he is ready to engage in combat with it. No matter who he is or what happened to him, this guy knows exactly what he needs to do. Jae Hwan confidently moves towards the creature and believes that his weapon is strong enough to defeat it. The ice sword is a very powerful weapon. The creature Zhenya has turned into seems scared. He didn't have time to do anything or even understand. His end came unexpectedly quickly. Thanks to the sharp blade, the head was separated from the body, and now he will not be able to scare anyone. It seems that this man's soul is dying irrevocably. He remembers for the last time the happiest moments of his life. In the world of chaos, it's raining, the bodies of the dead are smoking, and Jae Hwan doesn't care because he destroyed the monster. All that is left of him slowly disappears like rain erasing a pattern on the asphalt. And in an instant, nothing remained of Jen, the great swindler and criminal, but smoke. The protagonist realized that this creature had disappeared and would never return or recover, so he calmly hid his weapon. He pauses for a moment and looks at the place where his opponent was and thinks about his own existence. But he is still haunted by thoughts of horror. He is sure that he will definitely find someone here who will tell him about it. After that, he goes on a search. His mission is not yet complete. He has not done everything here yet. Mina never regained consciousness after inhaling black smoke. Huang did not leave the girl. He returned to her, and in the meantime, his subordinates were worried about the condition of their captain. Carlton is also feeling unwell, but he manages to explain that they need to warn the fortress. He approaches the girl. She is very sick. Mino believes that she cannot be saved in any way, so she asks him to kill her while she is conscious. The guy is surprised to see the girl in human form. He doesn't know why this is happening to him. He sat down next to her and looked at her with sympathy. Perhaps he had some feelings for her. The young man tries, but cannot use the skill doubt against her. This worries him a lot. Why can't he see her as she used to be? There are so many questions, so many unknowns in this city. But he is ready to accept Mino's last will and do as she asks, so the guy reached for the weapon. He understands that good emotions cannot exist in this terrible world. There is simply no place for them here. But suddenly, very abruptly, someone grabs his arm and tells him to stop and not do it. Claire convinces her that there is still a chance. The girl needs to be taken to the hospital as soon as possible, where she will be taken care of. You just need to hold on a little longer, and the chance for recovery will definitely appear. The hospital in these parts looks like a field hospital, with wards instead of wards. Mino lies motionless on the bed, while someone explains to her that if the grinding process does not stop, she will have no chance of survival. Suddenly there was a very sharp and unpleasant sound, signaling some kind of warning. Announcements appeared all over the fortress that the dead had appeared on their territory. In order to save themselves, the leadership asks all residents to immediately leave the fortress, which causes great panic. One young man, in a panic, tried to get at least some information from the guard and asked where they should run. But when the guard turned to him, it turned out to be a terrible monster, from which everyone ran away. The poor thing has no chance to escape. It's too late. The creature has stretched out its limbs towards him. On the territory of this world, there is real devastation and anarchy, and a mad scream is heard. People are trying their best to save themselves. They all want to live. That's how this world works. And now they have very little chance of survival while such monsters roam the streets. Suddenly, as if from nowhere, warriors appeared, destroying these monsters one after another with one blow. They finished their work quickly, so now they look as proud as possible. Huang calmly watches these events from the room where his girlfriend is located. Claire remembers everything Mino told her about him and asks if he really decided to go against all the rules of chaos. She believes that this person judges the world by himself and decides for himself who has the right to be called a good person. She understands him very well, because when you get here, you adapt not because you are stupid, but because there is no other choice. The guy suggests that people here simply don't have the courage to change anything. But Claire was skeptical of his words and asked what all this courage was for. Huang tries to convince the boy that it takes courage to step outside the box. Only with courage can one break accepted laws and rules to see a new path. The woman noticed that he was one of those people who always strived for something. Perhaps he was right, but she could not understand him because he had such courage. Claire raised her head, looked at Huang intently, and stated that she knew one thing for sure. She understands perfectly well that this guy is dangerous, so it is better to stay away from such people. Mino hopes he won't leave now, but Claire has made it clear that she wants him to leave. And this is not because of her personal dislike or desire, but because he gives people hope. And then he drives people to despair. It's terrible and very cruel. It's better for him to leave. The woman is angry with him. Before his arrival, everything was relatively fine, but now everything is going wrong. Instead, Mino asks Huang not to give up with a sweet smile on his face. The main character is lost in his thoughts. He looks at the poor girl and feels sorry for her. Most of the doctors and guards surrounded the captain. They found that most of the medicine had been used for the master of the fortress, so now they had little left. James shouts out an order to immediately bring all the medicines that are in the fortress. Jae Hwan watches all their actions carefully and thinks about how to help Mino. He noticed that the monster's horn was crushed in the bowl. Now it became clear how they used it. They tried to give it to their master, but even the horn of the cocked hat could not correct the situation. Huang asked if they could bring him back to life after he turned into a corpse. The man is very irritated by this question because he does not know the answer to it, so he answers like this. The protagonist grabs the captain by the shirt and lifts him up to shake him slightly. He slaps him and asks him to wake up, while his subordinates complain how he can behave like this to their master. However, the method seemed to work, as their attention shifted from the boy to the captain. He barely opened his eyes and said Jae Hwan's name, a little unclearly and very slowly. He holds his hand tenderly and has only one request. He wants the young man to kill him. But the boy asked incredulously, "Don't people usually ask for salvation?" The captain explained that according to Article 4, Section 1 of the Gorgon Fortress law, this was exactly what should be done in this situation. The boy bowed his head over the man and looked at him with compassion. This man was so dedicated to his work. If he had had at least a few people like that around him, he wouldn't have been stuck in the tower for 40 years. Suddenly, the system reacted and reported that the captain's soul destruction level had reached 94%. This is already a very large percentage, and it seems that there is no chance of salvation at all, because the decomposition process will soon begin. There is some noise in the street, and all the guards are ordered to step aside and make way for him. The same man who, a few minutes ago, destroyed the dead monster that was wandering the city streets, enters the tent. James realizes with fear that this is the captain of the demonic extermination squad, Jahir, who has the 5th degree. He drew his sharp sword and declared that he must do his job in accordance with Article 4, Section 1 of the Gorgon Fortress law. He has to kill the captain of the northern gate of Carlton and a girl he still does not know. This man waves a gun and doesn't ask if anyone is against his decision. But Huang doesn't hesitate to stop his weapon with his bare hands. It seems he has other plans. This action greatly surprised the captain of the demonic squad, because no one had ever done anything like this. The protagonist explains that he will not allow this man to be killed because he still has a few questions for him. Jahir frowned and couldn't understand how this guy managed to stop his blade with his bare hands. He tries to calmly explain that very soon Captain Carlton will cease to be human and will turn into a dead man, and this will lead to terrible consequences. However, he added that they are doing this with good intentions and just want to avoid this event. Huang pulled out Harnek's horn and asked if it could help him, and from the doctor's expression it was clear that it was exactly what he needed. Therefore, the guy, without thinking twice, crushes such a valuable item right in his hands. He did it to separate 2 sick people. The guy tries to save them both. Jaime sat down next to his captain and explained with relief that his numbers had stopped deteriorating, so there was hope. However, the result of Mino's treatment was completely different. These drugs did not help her as much. Its endurance level is very low, so the decomposition process does not stop, but on the contrary, accelerates. The level of destruction of her soul has reached 90%. It seems that they can no longer help her. However, Claire is still trying to save the girl. She asks to call Chan Ho, because he knows how to do dead man's strike. She insisted for a long time and explained that this blow could stop the destruction of the soul. The captain explained that they could not call upon the divine physician for such trivial matters. But after that, he calmly approaches the bed where the girl lies to finally do what he came for. However, Huang blocked his way. The captain politely explained that he did not want any arguments and asked him to disperse peacefully. The main character doesn't seem to be planning to do this. He has a very confident expression on his face. The guy has something in mind. His hand reaches for the sword, which is already ready to do its job. And then he explained that he would kill this girl because she asked him to do it. Jae-hwan approached the girl and tried to use the doubt skill on her again, after which he saw the world as it really is. Claire is still screaming at him to stop and not do anything stupid, but the guards are holding her back. And the skill of doubt never worked on the girl. He could not see her in a different light. The main character, with great sadness in his eyes, fulfills Mino's last request, to which he is not indifferent. He holds his sword tightly and after a split second of hesitation does it anyway. However, instead of what usually flows through the veins, silver drops drip onto the ground. Suddenly, very strange things happen, and Hwang himself does not understand what is happening here. He is blinded by a bright white light. The guy was trying to understand what had happened to him. His expression was very confused. The poor fellow looked around and realized that he was in an endless white space and did not know what it was. Only Hwang, Mino, and some grandfather remained, who looked at the girl with sympathy. He very kindly asks how Mino was able to bring herself to such a state with her methods. And then this man raised his head and realized with surprise that there was someone else here. He looks at the guy and screams how he ended up in his world and who he even is. The old man looked at the boy carefully and frowned. It was a very strange situation. He noticed how such a big soul could fit into such a small brain, like that of a 5-year-old child. The protagonist tried to use his doubt skill, but it had no effect on him. Hwang thought for a moment and guessed that this old man was the reason for the destruction of her soul. The boy thought that she might survive if he killed the man, so he attacked. Hwang is surprised that his grandfather was able to stop his punch, and his grandfather doesn't understand how the boy blocked his punch. Then he looked at his weapon in horror and realized that the entire blade was covered in cracks. Captain Jaher and the doctor watched them through the porthole in space with very surprised expressions on their faces. The old man was furious and shouted that the boy had no right to behave like that in his world. And the next moment, his weapon completely shattered into small pieces. His weapon was destroyed. He suffers. For him, it was a very important weapon, his favorite cocked hat. The main character didn't seem to do it on purpose. He didn't expect it to happen. In fact, this old man is a divine physician named Chang Ho, but he seems to be offended. The captain asked what he was doing there, if he needed to treat the owner of the fortress. But the man made an excuse, saying that a beautiful girl would soon die and she needed to be saved. But he adds that he doesn't care who owns the fortress, and these words really surprised the man. But Hwang prevented him from performing the dead man's strike and broke his sword, so now he can't do it. And then he looked at the sword that the boy was holding. It seemed to beckon him with its beauty. The old woman squealed with joy when she saw this unique and very rare weapon. He already reaches for the weapon and asks where the guy got it from, but Hwang stops him. But he asks if this old man can save the girl if you lend him your sword. Chang Ho smiled contentedly and promised that with such a weapon he would definitely succeed. The main character, without thinking, gives his unique weapon to almost the first person he meets. Now he slowly watches what the old man will do, and it seems that this grandfather is confident in his abilities. The doctor examined the weapon and noticed that the sword had exactly the same aura as its owner. Meanwhile, everyone in the room watches what is happening with surprise and fear. The divine doctor is preparing to perform his signature dead man's punch and looks very stern. He smiles with satisfaction and declares that he is ready to see what this weapon is capable of. Jae-hwan looked around and didn't understand what he was seeing or if it was some kind of hallucination. He thinks it's a bit like the effect of the doubt skill, and in the meantime, Grandpa is doing his job. Now the boy understands a little better what world this old man belongs to. The doctor tried to perform a dead man's strike, but suddenly something went wrong, and the sword fell out. Suddenly the old man fell, exhausted, and now lies on the ground near his weapon, unable to rise. The main character is wary. He does not understand what is happening and is worried that the ritual is not complete. Chang Ho had exhausted almost all of his magical power, as he had previously healed the master of the fortress. The guy can't believe that it's all over, but the girl still couldn't be saved. He realizes with horror that this world is collapsing and soon he will have no chance. The old man was drawing a girl with a sword, but he couldn't finish it, and now everything is crumbling and disappearing. He apologizes profusely and explains that he is very sorry that this happened. The protagonist quietly approaches the man and, without saying anything, takes the weapon from him. He has a very concentrated look on his face, and his grandfather says that this is a stupid idea because he doesn't know this world and won't be able to repeat his hit. Jae-hwan gave the man an angry look and explained that he didn't know how to punch. The guy holds the gun with both hands and wants to do it, although he won't be able to do it exactly the same way as the doctor. Chan-ho, horrified, asks him to stop because the dead man's kick is not that easy to perform. They think he is being stupid and wrong to think he can do this. But Hwang puts an end to all their conversations with just one word. He aggressively asks them to shut up. Now he begins to do what the old divine doctor did not have the strength to do. And it's unclear how he does it, but his sword emits something similar to ink. And the boy uses the sword for the first time to save a person, not to kill. The old man looks at the boy with wide eyes and cannot believe that he can do this. Instead, the protagonist concentrates and tries to remember what his girlfriend looks like. He thought for a moment, and the next moment he began to actively draw her as he saw her. The guy knows that the life of an innocent girl now depends on his actions. He remembers everything he knew about her, how sharp and stubborn she was, but too sensitive to be a killer. He also knows 100% that she will never betray her neighbor. This is a very noble trait. Hwang actively tries to impersonate a girl and looks like he's doing it while dancing. The guy looked closely at the portrait and realized that he had forgotten one important detail. He added the final touch by remembering how they met and how she protected him, so he added that she was very trusting. The main character completed work on the portrait and managed to make it very accurate and beautiful. Words of gratitude could be heard from the patient's bed. Mino thanked her for remembering something good about her. The young man looked at the bed with hope and realized that his friend was finally feeling better. They began to look much better, and now the girl smiles sincerely at her savior. The destruction of the soul is on the decline, and the process of decay has stopped. The captain does not understand how this is possible. The guy is surprised that he was able to look at the girl during the examination and ask how she feels. The old man noticed that the young man no longer looked so limited and asked who he was. And then he adds where he learned to perform the dead man's strike, or, more accurately, the lunge. Captain Jaher asked the doctor if the guy had actually managed to perform the dead man's kick. The old man frowned and said that he didn't want to admit it, but he did it. Dead man's kick is not a skill, so no one can replicate it. So the doctor concludes that Hwang is the same as him. Chang-ho means that this boy who strangely appeared in their world is an awakened one. These are creatures that have gone beyond the system. There are few of them. They refused to adapt to the system and gained incredible power. These people possess a power that far exceeds chaos, and there are only a few awakened people in all the great lands. The captain has some plans, but the doctor says it is too early to draw any conclusions and it is better to wait. But he continued and blew. Because there was another person who could deliver a dead man's blow, there was a chance to save the master of the fortress. But he turns to the divine physician, declaring that there is nothing more important than the master of the fortress. Someone tries to enter the cell and explains to the guards that he received permission from the fortress. Several people enter wearing long cloaks, and with their faces covered. This is a squad of shadows. They are responsible for internal security and are led by a 5th-rank captain. Although they do not understand what these people have forgotten, because the Shadow Squad has nothing to do with the dead. The captain approached Jae-hwan, knelt down before him and expressed his respects to the envoy. But they politely ask him to go with them to the fortress, and only then do they notice the divine doctor and the destruction squad. They are surprised and ask if this is true, and if he is really the messenger of the messenger, but Hwang also doesn't seem to quite understand what they are talking about. But I still came with them to the fortress, and many issues will be resolved there. The office is quiet and calm, the sun's rays pleasantly illuminate the room, and it's time to drink some warm tea. Jae-hwan and all the important people who were with him in the hall were also invited there. The man offers to introduce himself before getting down to business, so that he can understand who is in front of him. This is Jürgen Cheever. He handles the internal affairs of Gorgon Fortress, and the man said this with a very wide smile. The man remarks that this is exactly how the divine physician described him, and then asks him directly if he is the messenger of the messenger. Hwang replies that he is not a messenger. The shadow captain is surprised by this, but Jürgen guessed. The elder explained that the soul stone is capable of not only increasing spiritual energy, but also establishing affiliation with the clan of messengers. He added that if he didn't belong to that clan, then where did he get that stone and why didn't his soul break when he held it? But Hwang briefly replied that he found it. He was asked what happened to the owner of the stone, and he replied that he died. But the captain asked who dared to kill one of the 5 squads of the Great Land. The main character does not hide anything and calmly admits that he did it, but this really irritates the man. Jurgen asks him to calm down and explains that the guy probably had a good reason for doing what he did. Hwang said that they attacked him first and wanted to steal the horns he had gotten himself, so he simply gave up. This man knows that messengers of messengers can be very greedy when it comes to materials. And then he asks Jae Hwan to tell him in detail how he ended up in chaos with them. The main character honestly told everything as it happened, and Jurgen Cheever wants to sum up everything that was said. So this young man claims that he ended up in chaos by accident and accidentally received the Soul Stone. Then, just as by chance, he entered into a fight with the divine physician and managed to repeat the dead man's blow that he had seen for the first time in his life. The young man listened to all this and did not make a single comment or excuse because everything was really so. Chung Ho looked at the leader with wild amazement and could not understand why he believed his words. The man tries to explain that in order to win someone's trust, you need to learn to trust yourself. He then turns to the boy and asks if he can ask him one more question. He asks if Hwang is human, which greatly surprises and even scares the protagonist a little. Then he raised his head and looked into Jurgen's eyes, but it was clear that the boy was worried. He did not enter the game but left the world and destroyed the tower, and therefore his soul has no form. There is a high probability that the Tree of Illusions mistook him for dead and sent him to chaos, but his body is still somewhere on Earth. However, it remains a mystery to the boy how this man realized that he was alive. He explains that no one in chaos would call their death an accidental fall into chaos. He then asked if he wanted to reveal his identity because he was afraid of threats, but Hwang did not give a clear answer. The man thought for a bit and decided to confess and apologize for something. He said that for the last 4 days his people had been closely watching him and reporting everything to him. But this is nothing new to Jae Hwan. He knows all about it and easily exposed that guy on the roof. He explained that the young man was much stronger than they thought, so it was very difficult to keep track of him. Despite everything, they managed to obtain some information and open the data files. It reads, Danger level 55, power level not determined, damage caused is approximately 380 million horns. He managed to do all this here in just a few days, and Jurgen Cheever is extremely unhappy about it. This greatly surprised the divine physician. It was impossible to determine whether he was a hero or a villain. They shout into the room that he is simply crazy, and Jurgen calmly replies that they can call him different things. But he explains that it is precisely people like this young man that he calls the main hero, who will have to overcome a large number of obstacles. Such heroes have special values, so they are usually famous. But Jae Hwan is not very famous. It seems like someone is trying to hide him from the public. And it seems that this creature is hostile. If it weren't for him, then Hwan wouldn't have had problems with the documents. So he is the main character, pursued by an incredible force that cannot be controlled. That's why he accidentally ended up in chaos. And all this made him think. He is not 100% sure, but it is safe to assume that the monarch is behind all this. One of the 12 monarchs of the Great Lands, a young man ponders how powerful this creature could be. The man in the chair explained that he would not ask who he was or demand compensation for damages, and promised that he would be protected. Is the Gorgon Fortress so strong that it can withstand the onslaught of 12 monarchs of the Great Lands? Jurgen Cheever asks if the boy is being pursued by monarchs, and explains that there is a possibility that he is one of them. This turned out to be good news, since monarchs have no right to interfere in the affairs of chaos. The protagonist is not a stupid guy, and understands that such things do not happen for free, so he asks what they want in return. Everything happened exactly as he suspected. They wanted Jae Hwan to do them one favor, save the owner of the fortress. 2 hours later, the boy is led through dark corridors without windows or lighting. Meanwhile, the North Gate captain and the girl are still recovering in the hospital. He is being taken to the training field, instead of being able to rest peacefully in the guest room. Old Jong Ho noticed that he had a lunge and a punch, so he wanted to test his strength. And then he adds that this guy also cleaned the master's tower, and these words really surprise the guy. He asks what this old man knows, but he calmly replies that he knows a lot. They walked along long corridors, went down the stairs, and found themselves in front of a large and strong door. They enter the room and the man explains that if Jae Hwan wins, he will answer any questions. And then he adds threateningly that it is impossible to defeat him. But such words only fuel the boys' desire to fight. Some time had passed since their fight, and some things in the training room had gotten a little damaged. The protagonist looks down in surprise to see where the shorty is hiding. From the hole in the ground comes the voice of the divine medic Jung Ho, who barely survived Huang's blow. But he is very persistent. The old man has not yet managed to climb out of the hole, and he is already demanding revenge. The guy looks around the almost completely destroyed room and explains that the old man has already lost. But he justifies himself by saying that he didn't have time to use his most powerful move, and he didn't use it earlier because he was afraid that Huang would die from it. The guy remembered that his opponent had already said this, and then he was asked how old he was.